have such sights to show you.
We're Poppin the Scary horror podcast here. I'm your host Coale, and with me as always I have my good friend and co-host Aaron. Hello Aaron, happy anniversary, bubby.
Hey Coale, happy anniversary, babe.
I know. I mean, at this point, sure, yeah, let's rock and roll with it, but yep, it's crazy to think that we've officially been doing this podcast for about 2 years now.
Yos on yos.
Yeah, super crazy. I know we kind of had a discussion kind of talking about like how it was first year and everything. Any new thoughts or queries or anything like that since we've experienced another year of horror, like watching films and stuff?
Oh man, we've experienced another year of horror, but every year with you is nothing but heaven.
Well, thank you. I appreciate this. This is way more romantic than what I was anticipating.
It's an anniversary episode. Come on,
Well,
is second year? What is this? The paper anniversary?
you know-
What is the second year? Is this the gold diamonds? They say I just heard on a news story that the diamond companies are trying to get you to buy diamonds for your BFFs now. So,
Oh my god.
so I got you a little something.
Oh, you shouldn't have. You went to Jared's.
I went to Jared's.
Oh.
My boy Jared's. Hook me up with this BFF friend.
That's great, dude. That's Oh my gosh. Yeah, I mean, it's been a lot of fun for me as well, just getting to experience a lot more horror films. I know kind of the first year consisted of a lot more films that I knew about or bigger films that I hadn't seen before, so that was kind of exciting. Now this year's been kind of like an even mix of both, like films I've been wanting to see and then films that I'm like, oh, you got to see this one right here.
Yeah.
But of course, it's always most appropriate that every anniversary we should celebrate the Texas Chainsaw Massacre franchise there. And for today's episode, it's Leatherface, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre III. Now, I don't normally do this here, but I am going to show you the trailer.
Oh.
Because I feel like you need to watch the trailer.
Okay.
Like, I just recently watched it, like, maybe almost a year ago, maybe, and I was, like, thinking, I'm like, man, I gotta show this to Aaron whenever the time comes up. Because I definitely think it's worth seeing. But before I do you have any expectations of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre? Because definitely the first two films have definitely kind of basically they're kind of their own thing, as you mentioned, with the first one being more grounded in horror and the second one definitely amping up the camp factor.
Oh yeah. I don't really have any expectations except for just having watched the last two. I wonder if they're going to try to throw another curveball or if they're going to go stick to one of those routes or the others. I mean, obviously with the title Leatherface, I feel like he's going to be the central baddie. So but other than that, I really don't know. Yeah,
and this is probably a news flash for you. I also don't know what to expect. I have seen a few Texas Chainsaw Massacre films, but it's never been in that order. Leatherface was just one of those films that was not readily available, like streaming-wise, or I couldn't find it at my local video store. In fact, I ended up having to buy this DVD copy off of eBay, which is not, like, super rare. I got it for, like, $10-12 or whatever. It's one of those things that I'm like, I'll just wait, and if they come up with a Blu-ray or a 4K remaster or something like that. But once this episode came up, I'm like, yeah, okay, got to get the DVD. So I'm going in with blind expectations as well. So that'll be interesting to watch. And I know that our guest for today definitely has his own thoughts about this third installment there. But just to give you a little taste, this is the trailer they released for the third Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll do live reaction.
Oh, live react. Okay. New Line Cinema. Man, I feel like I haven't seen that logo in a second.
I know. I miss it, bud.
The lake.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I feel like this is a Friday the 13th trailer. All this, but
I know. That's what I was thinking.
I'm waiting for Jason to pop out and grab this large man. Is this Leatherface, or is this a different large man?
Then soon forgotten. But a legend is forever.
What is this? Oh, okay.
Leatherface, Texas Chainsaw Massacre III.
So Eve's
Now,
family.
from the producers of A Nightmare on Elm Street, the real terror begins. November 3rd.
Wow. That had some vibes.
Yeah.
The lady in the lake granting the sword to King Arthur Leatherface there. But it strikes by lightning. Yeah, that's something. If that's indicative of the movie's gonna go, then yeah, I'm buckling in.
Yeah. Whenever I watched it the first time, I was just floored with the sequence of actions. Because, it's like, you see the figure of Leatherface waiting by the lake. Then you see, like, the lady of the lake's hand shove the chainsaw vertically out of the water as it flies in the sky. Leatherface catches it and lightning strikes it.
To charge it so it can rev up. It's the sickest part. You gotta repower the chainsaw. Didn't know they went electric in 1990, but...
Yeah, I mean, I'm not gonna lie. That's probably one of the best trailers I've seen.
Yeah, that's just like a little snippet of hype. I have no idea what the plot of the movie is or anything. I just know Leatherface, chainsaw. And it gets you excited.
I mean, that I feel like those are two big important factors for the Texas Chainsaw Massacre franchise. So definitely glad to see his leathery face there. So how about we get this celebration started as we celebrate our 2nd year anniversary watching Leatherface, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre III.
Oh yeah, triple the face.
Disgrace.
Clean that trap, Alfred. Clean it good. Oh, you motherfuckers, don't tell me what I should do. Take your little motherfucking face tex and ram it up your butt. Is what I'm gonna do.
And we are back from watching Leatherface, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre Part 3. And, Aaron, comparatively to the trailer we witnessed in the intro there, how was it comparative to the movie?
Well, I was wondering if they're going to do a whole ass, like, King Arthur thing going on after watching that trailer. But, I didn't know what to expect. But, I loved this experience of this movie. It wasn't quite... There was no lightning shocking the chainsaw going in, but I didn't need that. It had plenty else going for it.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, though, now that you've mentioned it, I genuinely want Leatherface to be in medieval times and follow the tales of King Arthur. It's just Leatherface instead of King Arthur.
I haven't seen all the rest of these movies, but I wouldn't be surprised if they do that. Just they seem to be changing genres every sequel, and I'm cool with it.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, so that's initial thoughts there, but also, as mentioned before several times, I am super duper excited to announce that we have our special guest currently with us, returning from last year's anniversary episode. Dave, Dr. Shock Becker, has returned to help us review this film. So Dave, thank you so incredibly much for being here. I am always super excited to talk to you and happy that you're here with us right now.
Well, thank you. I'm honored to be here to talk about this movie. I mean, I'm honored you had me on for your 1 year anniversary. Mm-hmm. Talked about Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2, and I actually enjoyed that movie more watching it for your episode than I ever did before. and I started to see why people really like it. For me, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre is just sort of like Tobe Hooper's 1974 Texas Chainsaw Massacre is just sort of like an untouchable.
Mm-hmm.
For me, it is the greatest horror movie ever made.
Mm-hmm.
It is my pinnacle. So when number 2 came out, I was like, the comedy and Dennis Hopper off on his own and all this other stuff. But when you made me, I watched it again for your podcast. I'm like, you know what? This is a pretty damn good movie. I do like this film. I really do. I didn't like it before. And that's on me because I think it is a good movie. And I'm glad to be part of your second anniversary. And thank you so much for inviting me on.
Oh, of course. Yeah,
absolutely.
we're definitely psyched and happy that you're coming to join us to talk about the third installment of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre
And
franchise.
what I love about that trailer, it is like Leatherface meets Excalibur.
Yes.
That's what I love about it, because growing up in the early 80s on cable, Excalibur practically catapulted me into puberty. With that opening scene with anybody who's seen the movie knows what opening scene I'm talking about. And I'm telling you that watching Excalibur was like a seminal moment in my life, and to see them take that in Leatherface, Texas Chainsaw Massacre 3, and take those aspects and make that part of the trailer was just really special for me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was just it's a fun teaser there. Obviously, it ended up having little to no connection besides teasing a third
Nothing.
installment.
It had nothing to do with the movie. Yeah, nothing at all to do with the movie.
But it's just a fun thing that they just filmed. Like, it's just goofy there. But that being said, I was very surprised, and we could talk about this more later, how there wasn't as much comedy in the third film as the trailer kind of teased out. So I thought that was kind of interesting. I mean, there's definitely some moments there, but definitely not as prevalent as, say, the second installment of Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
I would agree with you 100%. I agree with you 100%. And originally, that is why I thought I liked this movie a little bit more than I liked the second one.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if that's still the case, but that's a spoiler alert. We'll take it from there.
Yeah, because like I remember specifically, I actually read your blog post. I tried to skim over it because I told Aaron this. I had actually never seen this film because it's not easy to find, but it's not also super rare. It's just one of those things I had to find on eBay, like a copy of. But I knew nothing about it, so I skipped past a lot of the plot points that you got, but tried to get general consensus. And you mentioned specifically that you ended up liking it more at the time better than Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2 because you felt like it respected more of the horror that the first one brought.
I felt that way. I felt that way at the time. Yes, I did.
Yeah, so I'm very curious to see kind of like, you know, now with you gaining an appreciation for the second one, how the third one is going to be. So I'm super happy you're able to kind of, you know, kind of get a refreshment there of watching the film. So before diving in, Dave, could you please give us that loving plot synopsis for us?
All right, and I'm going to go to my blog.
Ooh.
I'm going to go to the synopsis that I did for my blog.
Hell yeah, awesome.
Okay, college students Ryan, played by William Butler, and Michelle, played by Kate Hodge, are driving cross-country from California to Florida. While traveling through Texas, they are diverted by the state police, who are investigating a recently discovered mass grave, and end up at a small roadside gas station. What they don't realize is that the station is owned by Alfredo, played by Tom Everett, a member of the cannibalistic Sawyer family that's wanted for a string of murders they've committed throughout the state. Hoping to find a quick route out of Texas, the two instead end up as the Sawyer's prisoners and at the mercy of the demented Leatherface.
Beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. And it makes me even more excited as opposed to IMDb. You actually got to read it from your own blog. So that is real legit right there, and a perfect synopsis.
I like to do that. I like to do that when I have a review where I did the synopsis.
I think that's a lot smarter because IMDb can be pretty freaking bland whenever it comes to some of their descriptions.
Yeah, sometimes it's a couple sentences. Sometimes it's brilliant. I have seen synopsises on IMDb that are brilliant in 2 sentences.
Yeah.
And I've seen some where I've said, did this asshole even watch the movie?
On the right IMDb page.
But yeah, I think whenever it comes to the plot point, I mean, it definitely makes sense to follow the sequence of events, but it does make me a little bit curious whenever it comes to the third installment, because obviously they mentioned the very first film and the fact that, Sally, sorry, spoiler alerts for first Texas Chainsaw, don't know if I need to say that, but say it anyway, that she ends up being the sole survivor from the first massacre. I did find it interesting that they did mention that she did pass away like a few years afterwards in the opening credits.
Which they basically ignored in the Netflix 2022 movie.
Yes.
Or was it 2021 or 2022? I can't remember.
I want to say it was 2022, I think.
I do too, yes. They basically said, okay, forget what number 3 said. Here's Sally again.
Yes, exactly. So it just kind of makes me curious, because that'll be a question I'll probably have to refer over to you, Dave, whenever it comes to continuity of the series, whenever it comes to the Sawyer family members, and just kind of the overall, did these events actually occur? Because where we left off from Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2 ended up having a fairly big mass explosion in their little Sawyer hideout at that area, so it makes me curious, but that's for like later, obviously, there, but just focusing solely on the main protagonists, Michelle and Ryan. I mean, I feel like it's a perfect start of the film, just people passing through from California, making their way to Florida, cutting through Texas, basically, and they have a different gas station, and Alfredo, let me tell you what, obviously we could talk about characters at some point. He's screaming Sawyer all over his face from the moment you see him cutting out those haphazard pages in that Playboy.
Right, yes.
But I feel like it's fairly, like, perfectly A-okay plot point to follow through there. But I guess we should talk about some of the characters.
Yeah. One of the things I thought was interesting is that this movie introduced Kate Hodge.
Yes.
Now, Kate Hodge, you might remember from such movies as Leatherface, The Texas Chainsaw Massacre III, and a handful of others.
Yes. Yeah, it was so funny they made like a grand introduction there, which, I mean, at least it's not next generation for Kate Hodge. I guess there's... But
we can at least give her that she was not part of the abortion that was Texas Chainsaw Massacre, The Next Generation. Yes.
Yeah. And I will say it is kind of a difficult situation, I would say, for Kate to kind of follow up being like the sole, like, female
They tried
lead.
to make her like Sally Hardesty, and they tried to make her like Caroline Williams.
Yes,
in the second one. She was the third one. I don't know that she had the chops for it.
Yes.
At least early on. Early on, I thought she was weak. I thought she got stronger as the movie went on.
Yes.
True. Yeah.
I wholeheartedly agree. Whenever she is put in immediate danger and has to rebel back, that's whenever I felt like Kate was the strongest. But the beginning, for the most part, she's just kind of just going with the flow of things.
I'm just kind of like, why did they cast her? She doesn't have it. She's not there. But as the movie went on, and as it got into the later scenes, and she's sitting there with that tape around her head, and
Yes.
you know when they peeled that tape off, that had to hurt.
Dude,
all around her hair and everything.
Yes.
Oh my gosh, that was exactly my thoughts as well. So, yeah, Kate is in an unfortunate circumstance that the two female leads before her had very strong performances, and it's just setting the bar super high, especially for a new actress kind of stepping up to tackle on. But for what it is, I still think she is perfectly serviceable as like our main protagonist to follow through with these crazy events there.
I agree. As the movie goes on, she gets stronger. And I really, really connected with her at the end, like as it got towards the end of the movie. And I believed her as sort of the, I guess, the inheritor of Sally Hardesty and Caroline Williams's character,
Stretch, yeah,
from the second one, yeah.
Yeah, so I think that's perfectly fine there. And with her ride along bud, Ryan, I felt like
now,
he also...
anybody else, the first time you saw him, did you not think that was Carrie Elways?
No, it's funny because, like, I guess this will be spoilers there. I didn't realize Viggo Mortensen was in this film because that just blew me away.
Viggo Mortensen... Yeah. Viggo Mortensen, Aragorn is in this movie, but I'm talking the guy who played the boyfriend. He's in the car. The first time the camera sweeps him, I go, how the hell did they get Carrie Elways in this movie? He had already done The Princess Bride.
Yeah. Well, and here's the thing about the Viggo thing. I was like, it's like one of those things that I'm trying to look. I'm like, is that just Viggo? And I don't recognize him behind the glasses, like the Clark Kent effect or something, and the hair.
Right.
But I could see the Carrie Elways there. But I was just mostly I guess I was too distracted, being like, is that Viggo? I can't tell. Like, past the dirty
Viggo
windshield.
played one of the Sawyer family.
Yes, he played Tex.
Yeah, he played Tex.
Mm-hmm.
He played Tex. And it's a very interesting role. And I think Viggo Mortensen is one of those actors, I've never really seen him deliver a bad performance.
No.
And I include that in this movie.
Yes.
For me, he's the most magnetic member of the family.
Yes.
Well, him and young Jennifer Banco. I thought she was really strong, that little girl.
Yes.
I liked her as well in this movie. I thought that they had a strong dynamic.
Yes, I would totally agree with that. But yeah, it was funny thinking that Ryan was Carrie Elways. I didn't even know who he was afterwards there.
No, I don't know that anybody knows who he was after.
Yeah, it's good. William Butler is who played him. And again, I feel like we're kind of in the same boat with Kate Hodge, where I feel like he's perfectly fine. Like, he's a little more antagonistic than what she is, like, especially whenever they do end up at the Last Chance gas station, which, I
liked the concept that the two of them were breaking up. And they knew they were breaking up as they were driving.
Mm-hmm.
I liked that whole dynamic, that they weren't these two people like at the beginning of a love affair. They were at the end of their love affair.
Mm-hmm.
And she was going off to Europe or wherever she was going and was going to leave him behind. I just need some time to myself. So there was already some animosity between the two of them at the very start. Before the shit hit the fan, there was already animosity between the two of them.
That's something I give this film a lot of credit for. Is I feel like
I do too. I thought that's a very cool concept. I thought that was a very cool concept.
Yeah, I think honestly, every one of this survivors, every one of the not family members, had a really good reason for being there, backstory. I think even Ken Foray, I thought it was awesome just to have a prepper in the middle of this.
Well,
mix.
anytime you can have Ken Foray in a movie, I think it's stronger. And this was at the time. Ken Foray had done Dawn of the Dead in 1978. He did From Beyond in 1986. He did Ken Foray became a staple of the horror genre.
Mm-hmm.
So to have him in this movie, I thought was pretty cool. Yeah. And the type of character he played. There's a scene, and I don't want to get too far ahead of ourselves. I don't want to get into spoilers, but just firing through a window.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
That I thought was probably one of my favorite scenes in the movie.
I would agree wholeheartedly 100% with that.
Yeah, no, I love that. I love that. Just most of the survivors weren't just gonna lie down and die. They were they're not the I'm gonna run in the basement kind of survivors. They were all right.
Right, or I'm gonna run upstairs as they're chasing me.
Yeah. It definitely is nice to feel like you have a lot more thought put into survivors as opposed to being basically kind of cardboard cutouts, kind of serving a slasher purpose. Because definitely the slasher vibes and the horror I do want to address because I have my own thoughts about it later, but it is nice to kind of see them have more development as opposed to being oh, we're just driving through Texas, nothing going on, that they are dealing with this breakup there, and
As
they're
much
just
as
trying
I
to go
love
through
a
the motions.
group of friends in the woods for some reason, again, it's like I love just having these different characters that aren't necessarily together, you know what I mean, that have to, that end up getting grouped together and surviving together.
Yeah, and that's like the nice thing for the most part, that you could see like at moments between William and Kate's character that there are moments where they argue with each other where you could see why they're not working out, but then there are some like heartfelt moments where you felt like you understood why they were attracted to each other in the first place. And I feel like the film
you got both of that. I agree, you got both of that. You got that scene like where they're changing the tire.
Yes, exactly.
And he's like, bring the light over here.
Yeah.
But I heard something. I can't change, I got to tighten these lug nuts. And they're driving down the road. They get away. There's that great scene, and I don't want to spoil too much, but they're driving down the road again after changing the tire. And he's like, pull over. I got to change the tire. No, I'm not going to pull over. Pull over. We're going to lose a tire. We're going to be screwed. If you don't pull over and I tighten the lug nuts more, we're going to lose the tire.
Yes.
And at that point, it's funny because you're kind of on her side for a lot of the early scenes.
Yeah,
but in that argument, you're on his side saying, pull the hell over so he can tighten the lug nuts.
Right. And so I give this film a lot of credit for having moments like that to focus on the characters like that, because I definitely think if the characters were not somewhat interesting, then I think this film would definitely suffer with how slower paced some parts of the film can be.
Yeah,
so
that's true.
I think that's definitely accurate. So major kudos to William being the combative but still reasonable boyfriend there.
Right.
But going back to our boy Vigo, which again, I still have like Aragorn. I think that'll always be the role he's known for.
I think I might have seen Aragorn before I saw this movie, if I'm being honest.
I know I did. So it was just very jarring because I know he's done kind of more abstract roles outside of just being like, the beautiful hero.
He's an amazing actor. He was in a movie called The Indian Runner, directed by Sean Penn. I want to say it was 1992. And him and Robert Morse play brothers. It's based on a Bruce Springsteen song from his album Nebraska called Highway Patrolman. Where Robert Morse plays a highway patrolman, and he's got to go after his brother. And the brother is played by Viggo Mortensen, who's this wild, out-of-control kid. And it's a damn good role for Viggo Mortensen. I mean, I think he was like amazing in that. And he was, you saw him, what was it, in David Cronenberg's History of Violence?
Oh, yeah.
He was great in that movie. For me, I always think of Aragorn when I say Viggo Mortensen. It doesn't even matter, Green Card, which he, they eventually won an Oscar for. I just think of Aragorn because that's what I think of when I think of Viggo Mortensen.
Yes, same.
But he was such a good actor before and after that. He really was. There's a Western called Hidalgo, which is a good movie, and it's made even better by Viggo Mortensen's appearance in it.
He was in not only The Road, he was also in On the Road, which
I forgot it. You're right.
Which further increases my confusion because I tend to confuse those titles in my head. So then I'm like, the one Viggo Mortensen's in, it doesn't help me.
But let me tell you something. The Road is an amazing film.
Yes,
an amazing film. That is like one of the great sort of post-apocalyptic movies, I think.
Man, I have not seen it, so I will definitely have to add it to my backlog of films.
Good. Yeah.
It's very good. It's awesome.
Well, that's awesome. But yeah, I was very blown away by his performance because I do agree with you, Dave. I think he hits it out of the park perfectly because, it's one of those things that, like, whenever I saw him, I'm like, okay, he's probably going to be more of the grounded, more reasonable person. And yes, and no, I would probably say.
Well, yeah, he gives you that he gives you that feeling early on.
Yes, exactly. But
that's the character he's going to play. But I love how they twisted that around. His is probably my favorite character in the movie.
Same, absolutely.
Because they twist the your opinion of him around.
Yes, and I think it is very interesting because obviously we'll talk more in spoilers, but with that twist, I found him just more fascinating after the twist is revealed.
Yeah.
And I have a lot to say about that I'm super excited about, but at the same point, trying to hold myself there, but yeah. And so looking at our boy Alfredo, which I'm trying to think. Do you remember the actor's name that plays Alfredo in the film?
Tom Everett.
Okay, Tom Everett. He does a good job at making me uncomfortable, Dave. Like,
Oh man. Yeah, I mean it was almost like he was it was almost like he was sort of channeling a perverted Robin Williams.
I've never thought about
He had that
but
energy,
you're right on the money, Dave.
You know, where this guy's just talking every freaking second.
my
He's
gosh.
just not shutting up.
Mm-hmm. Oh my gosh. Yeah, and it's just like, because he has that like skull on a stick or something like that he shoves in Kate's face in the car there.
Right.
And he's being very sexual with the gas pump there.
Yeah.
It just made me
It's almost like, no, I'm going to change that. It's like he's a combination of Robin Williams and Pauly Shore.
That's terrifying.
He's like Pauly Shore if he had Robin Williams' personality.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah, I mean, he definitely helps set the creepy vibe because, like I said, it's just right off the bat. It's just like he's already creepy, and then they just keep turning the knob up of like, yeah, let's just make this even more uncomfortable.
To switch from creepy to just like getting dangerous, until it explodes at a T there. But
yeah, pretty much. Because like I knew the situation. Like as soon as they saw the bathroom there, and there's Alfredo, who is very, very inappropriate there. I'm like, he's going to pull a psycho on me. He has a
this is a character. This is a character who could never appear in a 2023 movie.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. He would get canceled immediately.
Right.
Just absolutely launched out. But one of the things I do love, and I have to give credit to the plot here, I love how the map affects their trajectory on where they're going. Mm-hmm. Because whenever they're looking at the map, basically they're initially going down one road, but then Tex is like, why would you go that way? This way is much shorter. And it's like, well, how come it isn't on the map? And it's like, well, that's an old map.
There's a moment, the moment in this movie where the characters are screwed is when the boyfriend says, take Texas Road, make a right.
Oh my gosh, yeah. That was just the defining moment. And
the minute that happens, you're like, okay, they're going to end up as somebody's dinner.
Yes, absolutely. And I was very surprised with the confrontation they had on the road, because they're like driving for a while and then it ends up being at night, and they have like a truck there that has like an animal hide strapped across the hood.
Yes. I love that. There was a similar scene in Rob Zombie's House of a Thousand Corpses.
Yes.
With the tow truck in that movie. But I love it in this movie. I love the idea because it's going down the road with no headlights.
Yes. Yeah.
And then all of a sudden kicks the lights on. Just how terrifying would that be? Put yourself in those characters, the two main characters. Put yourself in their position. All of a sudden you're like, oh my God, I don't know where I am. We're being followed by a potential maniac. It might even be Pauly Shore / Robin Williams from the gas station. We don't know who it is.
Yeah.
It turns out to be someone even more horrific.
Yes. Yeah. It ends up being one of the other members, as you find out. Is the name Tinker, right? I'm trying to think. Is that the character's name? Because it's the one with the earring, right?
Tinker. Yes. You know what? He was almost like, played by Joe Unger. He was like the head of the family.
Yeah.
He had that sort of role as the head of the family, but it was always sort of tentative.
Yes, absolutely.
He thought of himself as the head of the family, but several others didn't think of him as the head of the family.
As long as he wasn't pissing someone off.
Yeah, because that's That's the interesting thing is the fact that whenever you do get a close-up of him, you find that he has his prosthetic arm there, which it was funny because he scratched his head exactly the same way Bill Moseley did in the second film as Chop Top with the
nice.
hanger.
I actually said out loud because we hadn't seen
With the hanger,
yeah, we hadn't seen most of the family yet. I was like, did they just like recast him? And I was like, well, I guess it's not the same guy.
Yeah, because that's like
you think that through a lot of these movies.
Mm-hmm.
You really do, as far as the recasting. You're like, okay, is he playing this character? Is this one playing that character?
Right.
Yeah.
I was confused about some of the characters, especially once you get in the house. I was like, is that supposed to be this person? Like I recognize Grandpa, but the rest of them, I was like, is this supposed to be someone else?
Grandpa was basically a corpse in the corner.
Yes.
But he's been that in every damn movie. So.
Yeah, I mean, he looked especially more dead this time around.
He was extra dead. No,
yeah, I was very surprised about him making it through that grenade explosion in the second one.
I don't know.
Yes,
did the second
exactly.
movie in this movie's universe? Did the second movie even happen?
Well, God, in the first movie, he was 123.
Yes.
Yeah. So he has to be like pushing like 140.
He's pushing 180 by the time they got to this movie.
But it does make me curious. I don't know how much you know about the production history about this film, Dave, but obviously I know Gunnar was kind of done with the franchise after the first one.
But his name's in the credits. He served as, what was it? I saw Gunnar Hansen's name in the credits, didn't I?
Really? I
Of
didn't
this
even...
movie. I thought I did. I thought I saw Gunnar Hansen's name in the credits for this movie, but it was as an advisor.
Really? That's so interesting there.
I gotta look it up. I gotta look it up now because I might be wrong about that. Maybe it's someone else I'm thinking of.
Yeah.
But I'm almost positive that I saw Gunnar Hansen's name in the credits of this film.
Yeah, that'd be really interesting because obviously I know a majority of the cast didn't return minus Jim Sedow, who came back as the cook for the second one. But
yeah, Jim Sedow is my favorite character.
Yes, yeah, he does such a good job. Do you know why he didn't participate in this film? Because I know he passed away in 2003, and this came out in.
Oh
90.
God, I thought he passed away before that. I would have said because he died.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I mean he would have been 70 at the time of filming, around there. So it could be one of those things that he also retired from the role and only returned because wasn't Jim and Toby close friends with one another?
They were, yeah. Well, they would have had to been,
Yes.
because when Toby Hooper made that movie, he
Yeah.
basically made it with a bunch of college students and with friends that he knew. It was a very low budget affair. So yes.
Yeah, and not to mention, after filming the first film, I know that a lot of people weren't initially happy with Toby, with how hellish the whole production was, and how they basically got blacklisted because of their affiliation with the film.
Right. Yeah. Well, it's funny how time heals those wounds, though.
Yes, true. Yeah,
Because when it came time to do like a commentary on the DVD, pretty much most of the actors who were in the movie got together and did a commentary for the movie.
which is good. It's good that they're able to kind of like look back and laugh at it at the end of the day, everything. But yeah, it just made me curious on the production side. Just why a lot more family members are kind of omitted, because again, you have like the conclusion of the second film where there's that big explosion there, so it's like, okay, so Chop, the cook, Grandpa though survives. He survives the second one with the explosion of keeping the continuity.
He survived the next ice age, that guy.
He's a survivor for sure.
Yeah.
Gotta start drinking blood in the morning. Get to 123 at least.
Did you find anything about Gunnar Hansen's association with the third film?
I'm looking for it now. I have all of the credits up.
That is perfectly
I could have sworn that I saw his name in the credits.
You are all good. Like I said, I had no idea. But that's going to be one of the things that's going to be most interesting, is talking about Leatherface, which I have purposely kind of kept on the back end because I feel like, he's the titular character. The movie is named after him.
Right.
Yes.
Let's see.
No, I can't. I can't find anything.
No, it's
I pulled up the full credits and I can't find anything.
it's all good. I hate whenever I have to try to find something and it's just not popping up there.
No, you know what? It was not him. It was not him. Who's the guy who played Jason in part
Kane
6?
Hodder.
Kane Hodder. It was Kane Hodder.
Yes.
That's who I saw. It was Kane Hodder who was an advisor on this movie.
Yeah, which is like super crazy because he had already done a lot of the Friday.
He was the
13th
stunt
films.
coordinator.
Yeah,
he was the stunt coordinator on this movie. That's whose name I saw in the credits.
Okay.
Not Gunnar Hansen. It was Kane Hodder.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, I mean, obviously, big slasher legend for sure, Kane Hodder.
Yep.
So that's cool. I didn't even realize that he was stunt coordinator on the film there.
I didn't either.
Yeah, so definitely. I would have not talked about it, so thank you for bringing that up, Dave.
Yep.
So where were we? Yes, talking about Tinker. One of the small things I do like a ton, and you see this at the beginning whenever the couple accidentally hit the armadillo, is seeing that piercing. It appears once there, and then it appears again whenever they have that drive-by and the truck throws the wolf at their windshield. Mm-hmm. And then the third time, he has the earring as well. I thought that was such an interesting thing for them to do as a character. Just, this dude, I assume, is putting these earrings on all these other animals
on
around.
all that roadkill.
Right.
And just like Tex said, there's roadkill all over Texas. Right?
Yes.
So you would probably know firsthand.
But I thought he was a great, again, like you mentioned, Dave, he kind of views himself as a leader, but nobody else does. I think that's
no one else. Yes.
So I think that's definitely great.
It's a very strange dynamic in this family, because this is the most members of that family that we've gotten to this point.
Yes, absolutely.
If you think about it, you go back to the first one, Tobe Hooper's classic. You have Jim Sedow, you have the hitchhiker, you have Leatherface, and you have Grandpa.
Yes, that's it.
They're the 4 members of the family. By the time you get to the second one, it's basically the same. It's just there's different people playing them.
Yes, exactly.
Now you got Bill Moseley as Chop Top, who we're sort of meant to think might be the hitchhiker, but nah, he's not quite the hitchhiker.
Yes.
But there's still just 4 of them. In this one, you've got a young girl, you've got a mother, you've got Grandpa in the corner still rotting away. You've got, you got Tex. You've got a lot more members of the family. This is the first movie that sort of extended that family beyond what it had been. And the first one that introduced female members of the family.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's definitely interesting. And you actually brought up a really good point, Dave, about, Chop Top basically being an adaptation of the hitchhiker. But then you look at the family members and it's like, again, we mentioned with Tinker kind of like scratching his head with like the little hook hand he has, kind of similar to Chop Top. And then Alfredo also channels that hitchhiker whenever he starts taking the photo of Kate Hodge at the beginning of the film.
Yes, there's that scene with the photo. Yes, he's like, hey, here you go. You want to buy it? $5. No, $3.68. Give me $3.68.
So it's kind of interesting how they like move on, but they still carry over similar attributes of former family members.
And if you think of the way this movie opens, it opens with a narration exactly like the first movie.
Yes, exactly. So,
and I love that. It's not the narration because we all know John Larroquette's voice at this point. So we know it's not John Larroquette doing the narration for this movie, but it opens with a narration.
Yes.
And it gives you Sally Hardesty and was the only survivor, passed away in 1977, blah, 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 everything. And it ends with, the way that the first one did, Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Yeah, and I think that's, like, good. I mean, it's kind of like that's their Star Wars, title scroll.
Well,
it kind of is. It kind of is, yes. And I loved seeing that back in this film. I really did. And then when they're in that, they find that mass grave in that swamp or whatever it was. You get the quick, flashes from the camera like you did in the first movie.
Oh, I never even picked that up. There
are a lot of throwbacks in this third film to the first film.
Oh, yeah. George Lucas
It's almost
would
as
say
if
it
they were
rhymes.
saying, it's almost as if the makers of the third film were saying, we know you didn't like the second one. You didn't love the second one. So let's tie the first and the third together. It's like what happened
Yes.
with The Exorcist. The first Exorcist is a masterpiece. The second Exorcist is a smoldering pile of dung. The third Exorcist is a damn good movie. And they join together. They say, let's forget the second one ever happened. You get that in this one. But the problem is now, I kind of like the second movie,
Right.
Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Yeah, without spoiling the rating I give for this film, I agree, Dave. I definitely enjoyed the second one more than the third one. So that was the only disappointment, is that I tried to not go in with high expectations, but I couldn't help myself but be excited about what was next. Like, what was the next step up? Because I know that I knew at the very least you were somewhat fond of this film before watching the film.
And I still kind of am. I still kind of am. I've seen some of the weaknesses this time around. I think, what was that line? Oh God, what was it? I can't remember it now. And now you're going down under, when he's throwing things into the water. I'm like, okay, that kind of sucked.
that was just a weird sequence, because that was Alfredo doing that through the woods.
Yes.
And then he has his song he has, where he's like, motherfucker, doing that. That was just a very strange sequence of events. Alfredo is just an
now that I'm
enigma.
thinking of it, he's more Pauly Shore than he is Robin Williams.
They should have just at this point cast Pauly Shore. Obviously, no dissing, because he did a good job.
He
but
adopted into the family.
I might have liked that character a little more if they cast Pauly Shore, if I'm being honest. I think Biodome is a damn fun movie.
Oh my gosh, yeah. I mean, see, now you got like my brain thinking about Pauly Shore in a Texas Chainsaw film.
He's a long way from the shore.
Oh my god. I'm gonna try to keep on track and talk about more of the characters. Obviously, we did mention a little bit about Ken Foray, but to talk more a little bit about Benny, I do like how he is like properly prepared, but not in a situation that's like, why is this dude like fully prepared? Like he has a whole arsenal. Because
he set himself up as being a survivalist.
Mm-hmm.
That him and his friends had this camp.
Yeah.
Out in the middle of the on top of a mountain somewhere, and they were getting ready for the end of days, so that they could survive. And that's sort of what they built, his character around. And I would have sort of scoffed at anyone if it wasn't Ken Foray.
Yes, he pulls it off
because
amazingly.
I love Ken Foray. I don't think I've seen a movie where I didn't love a Ken Foray character. At this time period, especially from 90 backwards, from Dawn of the Dead and From Beyond and going, and even into this one. I love the fact that they brought Ken Foray into this movie.
Yes. He is a very strong actor to bring into the film, and I really
even if I
getting
didn't
to see
buy
him.
what happened with him at the end.
Yes, absolutely.
I kind of still liked it.
Yes, I would wholeheartedly agree. Ken is just always fun to watch whenever he's on screen, and he does, like I said, he gets that one moment towards the end of the film that I was just absolutely loving every second of.
Right.
Whenever he comes up to the house. Yeah.
That was my. That is probably, I if I were to pick my 3 favorite scenes, that would be number 1.
That's fair. I could not disagree with that.
When he's standing there and he's looking in, he's like, "What the fuck is happening here?"
Yes.
And he's just like, "Okay, I'm just going to open fire."
Yeah. But I feel like he's a good introduction to help at least, help out Michelle and Ryan, since obviously they're not experience with
Well,
survival.
I think,
yeah.
yeah, I think Ryan's chops were cut out early on.
Yeah.
Yes, for sure.
We were just never going to really accept him.
No.
I think the for me, the most I accepted him was the first time I saw him and said, "Is that Carrie Elways?" And then as soon as he started to talk, I was like, "No, that's not Carrie Elways."
Right.
You're like,
And then I was out on him. So it was nice that they had Ken Foray there
yes.
to sort of take on that role.
Yeah, for sure. It was definitely interesting kind of seeing him come up to bat. What I also wasn't expecting was Sarah, the sister of the gal who got basically whacked at the beginning of the film during that whole sequence, which
Right.
yeah, just seeing that sequence there with the violence and Leatherface making the face with fresh flesh,
Yeah.
it was
See,
yes, give me
that's
the
what
willies.
that's what brought me into this movie initially,
Mhm.
because the comedy in number 2 is what turned me off. And I'll be honest, and I'm not anymore, because I really like number
Yeah.
2. I've come to really admire that movie, but the Dennis Hopper character just felt like he was in a different film. And even now, even with me liking number 2, I feel Dennis Hopper is in a different movie than everybody else. I really do.
That's part of the fun.
It is. Well, it kind of is. It kind of is part of the fun at this point, because I think you could point to a half dozen movies where Dennis Hopper was the other guy in the movie. It just didn't fit in. But when it got to number 3, it just seemed like it was more cohesive to me.
Yes, for sure. It
The
felt
first
like,
time I saw it after number 2, it seemed more cohesive.
yeah, like it was just kind of going back to its roots there.
Right.
For sure. But yeah, whenever they have that intro sequence, but I think it is smart, I was kind of confused about Sarah, what they were going to do with the character, because you see her at the beginning, then you don't see her for a very long while until she just pops back up in the woods whenever they're all out there.
Yeah, it's almost like she was in The Hills Have Eyes.
Yes,
And just sort of appearing every now and again in the Texas Chainsaw Massacre franchise.
She's just kind of popping up.
Oh my God.
She would have been. It seems like she would have been more at home in The Hills Have Eyes, in Wes Craven's The Hills Have Eyes.
Yeah, for sure. I will say the actress Toni Hudson does a really good job of acting very estranged after witnessing like her sister and her like friends get murdered, basically.
Yes.
But I do think it is interesting that they do just throw her in the mix there, because it is like, oh, now we have this character with us.
There she is. I forgot about her.
Yes, exactly. So I thought that was kind of interesting there, and I felt like while I did find the character all right, I felt like just by the time she appeared in the film, there wasn't enough character development to keep her going, besides the fact that
No,
Yeah.
there really wasn't. There really wasn't. It just seemed like an added component
yeah,
to me. I think they needed a little bit more for that. That didn't work for me either.
Yes,
if I'm being honest.
Yes, for sure. I mean, I didn't mind it, and if it ultimately led to us getting kind of more horror aspects, I'm totally for that. But at the same point,
absolutely. I would have loved to have seen them take that character and somehow tie it to Wes Craven's The Hills Have Eyes.
Oh yeah, it would have been.
But they, that just didn't happen.
No, unfortunately not. So it's obviously
Because if you think about it, I think the Texas Chainsaw Massacre and The Hills Have Eyes are they're almost like they're very similar films.
Yes.
In a lot of ways. And I'm talking even the remakes of Texas Chainsaw Massacre and The Hills Have Eyes.
Mm-hmm.
You can see them existing in the same universe.
Yes, I could totally agree with that, for sure. Especially just given the fact that they are both about estranged families.
Estranged families and out in the middle of nowhere, and
Yeah, I'm doing that. So yeah, it's one of those things that I think, maybe a different film would have worked out better. This film kind of only serves as a purpose to drive the plot forward, I think, so no ill will towards her. So I want to talk about the little girl more that appears, played by Jennifer Banco, because that was very surprising as well, because, she seemed like just a cute little girl whenever you meet her. And
She was like Carol Ann.
Yes.
From the Poltergeist series. Do you not get that feeling every time you look at her? You think she's like a stand-in for Carol Ann.
I never thought about it, but again, it's been like it's been too long since I've seen Poltergeist, so I need to break that out again because that's one of my mom's favorite films.
Poltergeist it's one of my top 10 of all time. Yeah, because I saw it in the theater when it came out in '82, and you know, I went and saw it. My friends and I went and saw it because it's like, hey, Spielberg's name is attached to this because a year before we saw Raiders of the Lost Ark. Yeah. So we go, yeah, let's go watch Poltergeist. We didn't know what the hell the Poltergeist was. And we're sitting there in the theater. It was a beautiful, you know, summer day. And we're sitting there in the theater and we're shitting ourselves. We're scared out of our wits watching this movie because we didn't know what it was about. Nobody knew what the hell the Poltergeist was.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
And it's one of my great memories. As a matter of fact, the very first movie I ever owned on physical media, I recorded Poltergeist off of cable TV onto VHS.
Oh my gosh, wow.
Poltergeist is the very first movie I ever owned in my life.
Oh my gosh, yeah. I in all honesty, I have no excuse for why I haven't watched it again recently, because that was like one of the first horror films I watched, because at the time my parents didn't let me watch rated R films. So because it was PG-13.
Well, no, and it's funny, that was rated PG.
Yeah.
But it's only because Spielberg had great influence over the MPAA.
Oh my god.
That movie, there's no way that damn movie should have been PG. No way in hell Poltergeist should have been PG.
All right, honey.
It was originally rated R, and Spielberg went to the MPAA and said, guys, I'm Steven Spielberg. And they said, okay, we'll give it a PG.
No, you gotta love it. Toby tries to appeal the MPAA, still gets an R, even though he followed the rules to a T.
Yeah. Well, the funny thing is, Poltergeist was directed by Tobe Hooper.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And you really see both aspects of the two men involved in that movie. Tobe Hooper was the reason that movie should have gotten a PG-13.
Mm-hmm.
Or maybe an R, if we're being honest, with the violence and everything that was happening, the bodies flying out of the wall, the guy peeling his face. That's Tobe Hooper. The family, the Freeling family, that's Spielberg.
I would agree with that. Yeah, I've never.
The fact that he makes you care for that family as much as you do, that is Spielberg. The visceral moments of that movie, that's Hooper. It is like the perfect marriage of a Tobe Hooper and Steven Spielberg movie.
That is very accurate. Holy cow. Yeah, I need to grab the 4K copy. I've heard the restoration is amazing on that.
It's incredible. It's incredible. And I watch Poltergeist. I try to watch it at least once a year, and I've done that since 1982.
Oh my gosh, Dave. So you've been
I watched that movie once a year from 1982. And you know what? A movie that I saw right before that was Alien. I watched that one once.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, that Alien's great. That was like
the three movies I make sure I watch every year are Poltergeist, Alien, and Jaws.
Wow. Yeah, that's awesome. I'm surprised not Godfather, although that is a definitely big
you know what?
commitment.
No, you know what is funny? I don't put the Godfather on that. The three movies that I watch every year are the ones I just mentioned. Godfather I might watch once every 2 years.
Okay, that's fair.
And it is my number one movie. It really is. I love it. I think it's an amazing film. But as far as the ones that I got to watch every year, I go back to horror, which is my favorite genre. Yeah. And it is Poltergeist, Jaws, and Alien. I watch them at least once a year, those three movies.
That's terrific. That's awesome. I didn't even know that, but that's awesome to have that as a tradition there.
Yep. Yep.
Wow, holy cow, that was a tangent there. So
yeah. Where were we?
Yeah, Jennifer Banco. I think she does a great job at being a terrifying child.
I agree. I think she does a great. You know, it's funny. You get that. Well, it's funny when I watched it this time. The scene seemed heavy-handed.
Yes.
where Jennifer Banker comes running up and goes, "No, no, you can't do that again." And you get the shot of the girl and with the tape around her hair, where when they pull it off, it's gonna pull all her hair off, and she's smiling. She goes, "You told me I could do it this time."
Yeah.
It seems a little heavy-handed now.
Yeah.
More than it did any other time I saw the movie, if I'm being honest.
That's totally fair. I would imagine that would weigh on me as well. I just took it as sort of the black humor of like, you've seen every kid try to do that whenever it comes to wanting to do something, but they're like deemed too young for it. But then it's like, oh, I guess you're finally old enough to do it. But I can imagine that joke getting old real quick, especially because
it's just because once the minute she said it, I knew what was coming.
Yeah.
And it's not from having seen the movie before. I'm talking more from a point that if I'd never seen the movie before, at this point, with all the films I've seen, with her saying, no, you can't do that again, and the girl smiling, I would have been like, okay, she's now going to say something that's just going to be black-hearted.
Yeah, for sure.
And that's what happens.
Yeah, I can understand that, but the scene that follows immediately after her saying that, though, definitely gave me the willies afterwards. Yeah, suspense. So I'll have to talk more about that in spoilers, because that was one of the scenes.
Spoilers, yes.
It crawled underneath my skin. I think one of the final characters, aside from the main guy himself, is the one playing Mama Sawyer, which is Miriam Bride Nethery.
What, touching that thing on her throat?
Yes. Yeah. Oh my god.
Where her voice sounds a little different in every damn scene.
Oh my gosh, for sure. Yeah, it was an interesting addition that they added there, that little voice box that she held on to talking through, but
like I said, this was the first time they had to extend the family out. They gave you female characters in the family, and they extended it out to like different individuals. It wasn't just Leatherface and a few other people. There were more in this particular family, and that's one of the things I think I really like about this movie is how they extended that Sawyer family out.
Yeah, I'm very curious because I'm going to need your own thoughts whenever we talk about Leatherface, because there is a couple of things they call him in the film that I feel like I'm curious on what Dave thinks about this whenever it comes to the Sawyer family tree there. But whenever it came to her, I mean, I felt like, again, she's not given too much development there, but you do feel like she's kind of somewhat the head of the household there, because we talk about Tinker there, but then it's like everyone respects Mama. Basically.
Everyone respects Mama, yes.
So, yeah, I think we talked about Mama for the most part and kind of the noteworthy stuff. Now I want to get to the main character, because I'm always interested to see what you have to say about this. But that, of course, is Leatherface. And in this film, he's being played by R.A. Mihailov, I think you say his name?
Yes.
Mihailov.
Yes, I can't say it any better than that. So yes,
you're perfectly a-okay. And it's interesting because he is now the third actor to portray Leatherface in the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, since Bill Johnson did not reprise his role there. And I'm curious, I want to hear what you have to say about his performance as Leatherface in this film.
You know what? He looked every bit like Leatherface to me. He did, with that snaggly tooth and the way he was sort of like moving his mouth. He looked like Gunnar Hansen from the first movie.
Yes.
The difference between them is Gunnar Hansen in the first movie was a very frightened character. The whole scene, the scenes with him, when the kids were coming into the house and he had to knock them on the head with a hammer and throw them in the fridge and everything, he was terrified. There's that scene in the first movie where he runs to the window and he's looking out saying, where the hell are all these damn kids coming from? What's going on here? Because Leatherface was not used to being in charge. He was not used to being the dominant character. That was Jim Seedow. And he had to sort of deal with, like, what do I do? How am I doing? Okay, did I get them all? there's that great scene where in the first Texas Chainsaw Massacre, where Leatherface is sitting there and he's like licking his chops and he's looking out the window and he's frightened. He's afraid. He's like, did I get everything I was supposed to get? Did I get all the kids? I think that came close to that in this movie. Even with the fact that he had the strength of all these other family members around him, there was still something about that Leatherface in this movie that seemed a little meek.
For sure.
Like he wasn't quite the killer that everybody thought he was in the first movie and even in the second movie. Where there was a meekness to him. You know, and that scene where they brought him the gift. Of the Saw is family.
Yes.
That emboldened him a little bit more.
I would definitely agree with that sentiment there. He definitely had like a sense of self-importance wielding that bad boy.
All of a sudden, he became more than just Junior.
It's definitely interesting kind of seeing him in this film specifically, because I do agree. I feel like Gunnar Hansen did bring the fact that he kind of felt like more like he was the victim of all these strangers running into his house.
There's that great scene in the first Texas Chainsaw Massacre where Jim Seadow comes walking in and he's carrying that stick. And he's like, did you get all those kids? And Gunnar, he's pointing to the fridge. He's pointing out. He's like, you got them all? It's like, yes, he did. It's like, you sure? Yes. And you see Jim Seadow, he's just standing there with the stick. He wants to hit him. He wants to hit him in that movie. But he can't because he did everything right. And then all of a sudden, Jim Seadow is like, you damn fool, you ruined the door! And he starts beating him with the stick.
Such a great
He couldn't help himself. He had to hit him. He had to like put him in his place. But that was like Leatherface as like he was like the subordinate in the first movie. He really was. Everyone thinks Leatherface in that first movie. No, he was the subordinate. He was like the lowest rung of the ladder in that first movie. The second movie, it got a little bit stronger because you got the scenes with him and Caroline Williams.
Yes.
And you learned to like him a little bit more. In this third movie, he's sort of still he's still a bottom rung until that scene with the oven.
I would definitely agree whenever he finally turns the tables, because that's the one thing I will say about Bill Johnson's performance. While I feel like it's hard to compare everything to Gunnar Hansen, because I felt like he just did a perfect performance in my honest opinion. But Bill Johnson, I felt like in the second film, brought a sort of sensitivity to Leatherface, because again, in the film, Leatherface starts feeling feelings towards Stretch and everything, and kind of tries to help her out. So you get to see that side. But with this one, I did feel like there was that sense, like, and I know they probably did this for laughs, but I can't think, the speak and spell sort of thing, like where he has to
right. What is this? And there's 5 spaces. He goes FOOD. That is not correct. Try again. FOOD. He does that 8 times?
Yeah, he keeps like doing it. So he has like those moments where he has like those quiet moments, like whether it's him sewing his new face together or hanging out with that little toy and everything. But then he does have moments where it is like genuine, like he is going for the kill a lot of times. Like the initial time he's seen first, I believe, is whenever Michelle and Ryan see him in the car and he starts like hacking away towards the back of the trunk and everything.
Yes.
So
he takes off the trunk. He basically pulls the damn trunk off.
And just, like, lifts it up like a trophy, like
Yeah, right. He pulls it off, and they're driving away, and she's like, "What?" He's like, "He just pulled off the trunk."
Yeah. So while I do think that R.A. Miliahoff does a good job getting the quiet moments, I feel like between the first 3, he's more so violent than the other ones. I mean, it's not even comparable, and I won't get into like spoilers about this film, but the remake Texas Chainsaw Massacre, that Leatherface, as much as I like him, he is like the Hulk with how much violence
Yeah.
is surging through his veins. But
Each movie that goes on, Leatherface gets stronger.
Oh
In
my
the first
gosh.
movie, he's a complete subordinate. He
Yeah.
really is. He's a complete subordinate. By the second movie, he starts out as a subordinate, but he gets a little stronger because he has this relationship with Stretch. In the third movie, he's a subordinate, but he's not going to take the BS that his family gives him.
No, not at all.
And he's going to say, "Get my Walkman out of the fire, you asshole."
Yeah.
With your good hand. Yeah.
Yeah. With the good hand, as Aaron mentioned.
Right, yes. He was going to put it in his hook. He's like, "No, screw you. Take the flesh and get my Walkman."
But it is interesting that they did kind of make him a lot more of a threat. I mean, like I said, Leatherface is
Absolutely.
still
By the
terrifying.
time you get to 2022, by the time you get to the movie in 2022, this guy's a goddamn terror.
Yeah. The CEO. Climbing that ladder.
So it was just kind of interesting, kind of seeing him kind of chase more with like malicious intent, as opposed to the other films where he's like, "I gotta catch you guys. Like, you guys
Right.
are the danger."
Exactly. That was the whole first movie. He couldn't let anyone escape because they saw the house. And you got that set up early on in the movie, in the first Texas Chainsaw, where Jim Seadow's like, "You don't want to go up to that house. People don't like it when you hang out at houses that, where you don't." "Oh, well, my grandpa owned the house." "Oh, that's your granddaddy's house, huh?" "Yeah, you don't want to go up there. Why don't you hang around, get a little barbecue and but it was Leatherface's job to make sure that anybody who saw their house never saw anything again.
Yes, exactly. And so it was kind of interesting because you don't get to see the Sawyer household until like towards the last third of the film. I feel like towards like the end of the second third there. So it's kind of interesting. So because like I said, Leatherface does not mess around. He chases people a lot, and there's definitely some crazy choreographed scenes that do occur in the film.
You get those same sort of scenes from the first one, chasing through the woods. Sort of swinging the Sawyer's family chainsaw. That might be one of my favorite aspects of this film.
Really?
That they gave him a gift with the Sawyer's family etched on the blade.
Yeah, I think that's kind of nice because that's about the only nice thing that you see the family kind of do for Leatherface.
Yes,
they're
exactly.
So abusive.
And like, what was it? 3 minutes after that they gave him that gift, he was holding that guy's hand in the fire.
Yes, exactly.
And that guy was the protagonist, the one who sort of was the guy who spearheaded that gift.
Yes, exactly. It's just so funny, but I will say the one thing, and maybe this is just me. I'm trying to think. Did it seem like at points Leatherface seemed a little bit smaller than Gunner and Bill Johnson there? I felt like his physique was kind of shrunk down a teensy bit.
It might have been. It might have been because he was surrounded by even more family members.
That's true. I could see that because I know before
that all of us, and they kept calling him Junior throughout this. And you had the mother character, you had Jennifer Banco's character, and Viggo Mortensen, and
Joe Unger.
Yes, exactly. All the other characters in the family. This is the biggest Sawyer family we got in the movie.
I would.
So all of a sudden, where you had in the first one there were 4 characters, and Leatherface being the bottom. He was sort of the bottom rung in that one. In the second one, there were 3 characters. If you think about it, you have Chop Top, you had Jim Seadow, and you had Leatherface. He was still kind of at the bottom, but he was getting a little stronger. In this one, there's 5, 6 characters in the family, and he's still at the bottom, but he even gets stronger from there.
I would most certainly agree.
So
with that.
I agree with you. I think this one he seems like he might be like even lower on the pecking chain.
Yeah,
but he gets angry, and there are times when he's like, "I'm not going to take this BS anymore."
Yes,
and you didn't get that in either of the first 2 movies. He never stood up to the family members in the first 2 movies. He does in this movie.
Yeah, so it's really nice to kind of see a character progression. I am curious though, because this is the first time he's called Junior in the franchise, because before he was referred to as Bubba, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So I'm curious as to why the sudden change of like what he's called, like why they're calling him Junior as opposed to Bubba.
I think it's only because there were a lot more people.
Really?
All of a sudden, there's a mother character, a younger girl, and there's that scene where they say Bubba makes beautiful babies.
Yeah.
Are we to believe Jennifer Banco was his daughter?
Oh my god.
Maybe, yeah. That one line alone got my brain going to places I didn't want it to
Yeah,
go to.
exactly. It's like he makes beautiful kids. Wait a second. Is Jennifer Banco his daughter? Are you kidding me?
I glazed over that line, but as soon as you said it, it just came flooding back there.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's like Bubba makes beautiful babies. Well, Bubba basically looks like a tractor ran over his face. So the fact that he can make beautiful babies, that's pretty amazing. But the only character in the movie we can look at and say might be Leatherface's child is Jennifer Banco.
Yeah. That would about be the only one I would imagine.
Little
within that
girl
time frame.
in this movie. Yeah, that's the only one we can look at and say maybe that's his daughter. But you know what? It doesn't really lay that out. It doesn't lay that out like it should.
Yeah, that's why I had like the question about the family tree, kind of figuring out like how everyone is connected there. But even like in the first few films, they're not really specific on what the relationship is amongst each other. You just know they're the Sawyer family.
Yeah, exactly. Jim Sedow, they sort of talk about him like he might be. I've seen reviews where they talk about him like the father, and they talk about him as the older brother. I always thought he was the older brother.
I could see that just being
to
close in
the
age.
hitchhiker and to Leatherface. He was the older brother.
Yeah.
And he would come in and he would sort of kick ass. God, I love Jim Sedow in that first movie. And I love him in the second movie, too. That scene where he's standing there with that trophy.
Yeah.
And it's got like the meat and it's dripping onto his polyester suit. I love that scene. I do. I think Jim Sedow is like amazing in both those first two movies. God, I wish he would have come back. I didn't even know he was alive for this third one. If I did, I wish he would have come back for this. At least for a cameo. Just something. Just pop out of the woods.
Yes, that would have been like really good. Just like a quick cameo or something. He could even been Grandpa. Just have him be Grandpa this time round.
Let him be like Grandpa who gets his gut shot up.
Yeah, because I guess that's just the question. Because again, if we're going off that grenade explosion, like supposedly if Jim Sedow died in the second one, I don't know how in the world Leatherface made it out alive, given that he had a chainsaw running through his stomach there.
Exactly.
The only
you had that great scene at the end with Caroline Williams, and that was the new chainsaw dance. You know, where she's dancing around with the chainsaw in number 2. And I've talked with Caroline Williams on Twitter. You know, her and I are
awesome.
Friends.
That's great.
And she's amazing. She really is. And I think she was the best, probably for me, my favorite part of part 2.
That's fair. I could totally understand that exact same reason why.
Because that scene at the end where she's screaming her head off.
Yes.
That got the closest to me to the first Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Yes.
To Marilyn Chambers.
Yeah.
You know, she was like the second great scream queen in the series.
I can't disagree with that, Dave. You're right on the money about that. It's so interesting to kind of see those parallels in the screaming and everything there, and how she did, which I guess, as we mentioned before, kind of unfortunately hurts Kate Hodges' performance because of the people she has to follow after. And so I think that's the nice thing about RA is the fact that I don't feel like he does disservice to Leatherface as a character there.
No, I think he looked the part. I think he played the part. I really do.
Mhm. Yeah.
And as far as Kate Hodges is concerned,
mhm.
and we already talked about this.
Yeah.
She was not strong early in the movie. She was strong late in the movie.
100%. Absolutely agree with that.
Where she was screaming her head off.
Yes.
That whole scene with, where she's like, sorry, little guy.
Yeah.
Sorry, little guy.
Yeah.
I thought that was amazing. I thought that was a great scene.
It really was. It really was. So it's nice to kind of see her just be able to pull that off afterwards. Yep. I did have a couple of other things about Leatherface there. I thought one of the interesting additions to him was the fact he had that leg brace on.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was really cool.
Mm-hmm.
I liked that. I liked that. I did. I liked that addition to Leatherface.
Man, and I was like, I thought that it was a good device to show when he was getting near, aside from the loud revving of the chainsaw, like just hearing the creaking of the brace.
Yes.
There.
And that was what made the lead character run off and say, hey, I hear something. And she's shining the light into like the forest.
Mm-hmm.
And her boyfriend's like, get back here. I'm trying to change the damn tire.
Yeah.
I like that scene. I really did.
Yeah, it was a really good scene. It makes me curious why they decided to give him that leg brace, though, aside from like those couple of like suspenseful moments. Because the only thing I could think of is whenever he gets his leg sawed in the first film, he gets it there. And I can't remember between his battle. Like I said, at that point, I wouldn't be surprised if they were not acknowledging the continuity from the second one, given how poorly received it was at theaters there. If they're just going off the first film's injury, or if it was a battle after dealing with Dennis Hopper basically going kamikaze on them. I don't know. This is just like the continuity brain that I love focusing on, like whether it comes to family lines, how they're related, or why Leatherface has a leg brace in this.
If I were to go to anything, I would say it was because of what happened in the first movie.
Yeah. That's what I was thinking.
When the saw comes down on his leg in the first movie, I think that is what led to his leg brace in the third movie.
Yes. Yeah, that was just something I was very curious about. The other thing I will say is whenever it came to the mask of Leatherface, it almost looked too human, if that makes sense. Like, because of how perfectly sewn together it was. Because with Gunner's mask, I felt like that sucker was like sun-dried skin. It looked like rawhide or something.
Yeah.
On his
in the
face.
first movie, it was just visceral.
Yes. And then in the second one, you could tell it was misshapen and everything. Definitely looked very leathery, with how it was. But this one, at certain points, it almost reminded me of Billy Butcherson's face from Hocus Pocus. There, just sort of that zombified look there. So that it was just always throwing me off there, but at the same point, whenever you got close, you could see how mangled it truly was. I think it's just unfortunate. A lot of the film takes place at night there, and they're wandering through the woods. So whenever Leatherface is roaming the woods, he's like kind of cast in shadows, so you don't get to see that. And plus, he has flowing locks this time round. Like, it is some long looking hair.
Right.
Going on, so it was definitely interesting kind of seeing how they changed up the design for the third film there. And well, we finally managed to get through a lot of characters. This has been a lot more characters than the previous episodes where it's like there's these other characters, but there's nothing much to say about them, so it's actually kind of interesting to kind of go way more into detail about each of the characters that are set up. One thing I do want to talk about, without spoiling anything, is whenever it came to the moments of horror, the stuff I was prepared to see and everything, even though we both watched the unrated version of it, I didn't feel like with what I got, it was that much worse than what the rated version would have been whenever it came to the violence, because they would always cut away, I feel like, at some points. It felt like they were being very careful around the rating of the film. I don't know if you ever got that vibe from it at all, Dave.
Yeah, you know what I did? Because I watched the unrated version, and yes, you're right. There are a few visceral moments in the film, but not as many as I was expecting.
Mm-hmm.
I
Yeah.
thought there would be more. I really did. And I think there was going to be more if it wasn't for the MPAA and the rating system.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because I felt like
You
they
know,
had lots of setups. Yeah, like you mentioned, and they do embellish on some scenes a little bit, but I feel like as soon as contact is made, they just cut away real quickly too.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
See, this is 1990, and this is a point in the MPAA where they had taken control. They took control maybe around 1984, 85, where they would just take a movie and they'd say, okay, cut this scene, cut that scene, cut this scene, or you're going to get an X. This is in the days before NC-17.
Mm-hmm.
And they were doing this with franchises that had been established. I'm talking Halloween, Friday the 13th, all of these franchises. They were taking these movies and saying, if you don't cut this, cut that, cut this, you're going to get an X.
Yeah.
It happened probably right around 84. I think Friday the 13th, the final chapter, might have been the last one to get away with what they got away with. By the time Friday the 13th Part 5 came around, which I've on record as not being the biggest fan of,
Same.
Mostly because of the mother and that hillbilly son of hers.
Oh my gosh, they are
I
grating.
hate them. I hate them with a passion. Every time I see them, I think they're like Yosemite Sam's wife and son.
I can see that.
And I don't even know why they're in the goddamn movie because they don't even matter to the plot. But before that, you sort of saw like what horror, what slashers could be.
Yes.
The MPA sort of clashed down when it got to number 5 and number 6 and on from Friday the 13th and Halloween. The later films, it would have been Halloween Part 4 and Part 5.
Right.
It would have been the later Friday the 13th, not Friday the 13th, later Nightmare on Elm Street movies where they sort of like clamped down and said, yeah, you can't do this, you can't do that. And it really sort of resonated with them. Mm-hmm. It did. It sort of affected those movies.
Yeah.
And I think that affected this film as well.
Yeah, because that was an interesting hold up because with this film for me, because I mean we've talked about this before and how the first film Tobe Hooper tried to abide by MPA rules to get a PG rating or even a G rating.
Yeah, he wanted to get a PG.
Yes.
Come on. Yeah. You know what? Let's be honest. If you watch the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre, Tobe Hooper, are you fucking kidding me? You think you're going to get a PG for that movie? It doesn't matter that you don't show violence. That is a horrific horror film.
It really is. And
you're not getting a PG for that movie if you all of a sudden have Howdy Doody show up in the middle of the movie. You're not getting a goddamn PG rating for that movie.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. And I think that's just one of the interesting things to look at because, like, technically with Leatherface, which obviously you mentioned, the MPA started really cracking down at this time, especially.
Yeah.
Whereas the first film technically abides by the rules the MPA stand out, and you don't see a lot. Yeah,
it really does.
Mm-hmm.
But Tobe Hooper thought he would get a PG out of that. No, you're not getting a PG out of.
No way.
You're not getting a PG out of a movie about a family that kills.
Yes.
You're not going to get a PG out of that. But you could see where he was going for.
Yes, exactly.
You could. You really could. And it wasn't, until you got to the mid 80s. And it was even after Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2. When did that one come out? When did Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2 come out?
I want to say it was, I want to say it's 87.
Oh, no, that's 86.
Oh, 86.
86.
Yeah.
That was after the fact. That was after the MPAA started to crash down on horror films.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
It was after it. And, you kind of see it. You kind of do. But I love the fact that they were able to sort of work around that
Yeah.
and still make a movie that was horrific.
Yes, because I will say, even though I did feel like they pulled away from some scenes, there are some scenes that are set up that genuinely I was like, ooh, man, that just gave me the willies, basically.
Yeah,
Especially
exactly.
whenever it comes to the kitchen.
Oh yeah.
They make sure every Texas Chainsaw dining room scene has to be uncomfortable.
Exactly. Yes.
They do that.
It doesn't matter which movie they're in, even if they're in that in number 2 when they're under that carnival.
Yes, exactly.
They're going to have a scene in there where you're just cringing.
Yes, and I do think there is a couple of moments where they do that successfully. I think it's just one of those things that, unfortunately, with the way they set up and wrote the scene, with what footage they had and everything, they're just like,
right,
we're just gonna have to rock and roll with it. So it's unfortunate for them. They weren't able to capture all of the horror like Tobe Hooper was in the first film, but I do feel like they gave a valiant effort.
You know what? It's funny because Tobe Hooper always thought the first movie was a comedy.
Yes.
He always looked at the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre as a comedy.
Mm-hmm.
And you know what? Sorry, Toby, it's not. That's a horror movie. Yeah. It's absolutely a horror movie. By the time they got to the second one, you see the humor a little bit more in it, yes. And that's what he's going for.
Mm-hmm.
But by the time they got to the third one, it's back to straight horror.
One other aspect I do want to talk about, and this is actually something I was surprised to really notice, is the music of the film, because I felt like as the film progressed on, it got heavier with the rock sounding, which was very surprising for the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Because, I mean, obviously, we got lots of licensed tunes in the second film and everything, but this was like, you know, just shredding electric guitar going on towards the end of the film there, and even having that song dedicated to Leatherface during the credits. Yeah. It's one of those things where it's jarring, but at the same point, I kind of like it for this film, if that makes sense. Right. Especially with how much attitude it has. It was one of those things that I was just like, yeah, I dig it. I dig it. I'm going to have to throw it onto my Halloween playlist, just the Leatherface doing that towards the end.
It's almost like this movie says, you know what, screw you, here's what we are.
It's rigor mortis time, baby.
Yes.
But that was just like one thing, and I tried to see like if there was any specific musicians that like was playing the electric guitar towards the end and playing that one song, but I was just like, you know what, yeah, this is sick. You know, with all the events that led up to that point, it's like, sure, why not? Let's do this.
Right.
Awesome. I'm trying to think, aside from a lot of the bullet points we've mentioned, is there anything else you would want to talk about before spoilers, Dave?
No, actually, I think we covered it all.
Yeah. How about you, Aaron? Any other thoughts, tidbits?
I don't think so. I do just want to make a quick comment and say the cinematography in this film, I was actually pretty impressed with, whether it was the light, like the camera going down the side of the road where they had all the flares, or like, you know, flipping back and forth between, Leatherface approaching the car slowly, or the car following them with the lights off, and then it shoots back. I was impressed with the camera work writ large across this film. And I felt like the editing was pretty seamless. It wasn't fancy, but I just wanted to commend the film for that, because that's something I did notice where I was like, oh, that was a neat shot. You know, I found myself saying that a couple times. That's the only other aspect I could think we didn't cover. Just a quick comment on that, but yeah, I think we got everything.
And I agree 100%. I love the cinematography in this film.
Yeah, it was good, especially whenever Benny meets Tinker on the road, and like Aaron mentioned, the flares, like contrasting with the blue night light that's going throughout it, and you have that bright red light.
Right.
It is funny how Tinker decides to mess around by lighting all of them up in a row there, but it visually looks pretty there.
Right.
And it is funny because one of the other things, and I guess this is slight spoilers, but we've already mentioned it, the Sawyer household, while it isn't my favorite hangout compared to the first two films, they did make sure to throw in a lot of skeletons.
That's true.
Yes.
in the room. And I love how it's all in the little girl's room as well.
Yeah, well, I love the
Right.
skeleton by Leatherface's little workshop, too. He seemed to have put some human parts together while he was working on his Leatherface.
Yeah, it's just like his
And
own...
that swamp
Ah, yeah.
Mhm.
I like the swamp.
that they got. Oh my God! How could the authorities miss all of those bodies floating in that swamp?
Especially because, a good bog will probably petrify those things. There should be some decent remains in there.
Yeah,
Right.
I thought it was interesting that for a setting wise that they did have it set in kind of a swampy marsh area, which I actually learned this from your blog, Dave, that this film was not shot in Texas.
No, it was not. But you know what? It's funny because there was a movie right after the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre in 1974, directed by Tobe Hooper, called Eaten Alive from 1976. And it was about an alligator in a swampy area.
Mm.
And when you watch that movie, you think it could exist in the same universe as the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre. You think it might be the town right over from where all of that happened.
Oh my God.
And that's two Tobe Hooper movies. And it's one of the most, I think, underrated for me Tobe Hooper movies, Eaten Alive from 1976. It's amazing. It's about a guy who runs this sort of small motel, and he has an alligator out in his swamp. And whenever somebody pisses him off, he throws them into the alligator. It's a really, really cool movie. And it is where Quentin Tarantino, he saw this film in the theater when he was a young man. And Robert Englund is in this movie. He plays a character called Buck. And he says, "Hey, I'm Buck, and I'm ready to fuck."
That's where he got the line from.
That's where he got the line in Kill Bill.
Oh my gosh, I didn't even
From
know that.
Tobe Hooper's Eaten Alive, 1976.
Oh my gosh. That is so funny. I had no idea about that.
Oh, very cool. Yeah, it's very cool.
Awesome. All right. Well, with all that out of the way, we'll go ahead and jump right into ratings. And Dave, if you'll please do the honors, please give us your rating for Leatherface, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre Part 3.
All right. As much as we have been sort of sucking the dick of this movie, I can't say that this most recent viewing was my favorite viewing of the movie. I saw a few weaknesses in it. There were like moments where I'm like, okay, the dialogue is a little clunky. Okay, that scene didn't really match with what was going on. I didn't really love Kate Hodge in the lead role. As much as I liked her before, I didn't love her this time around. I thought she was a little weak. That said, I still have a soft spot for this film. I really do. So I'm going to come in with a 7 out of 10.
Oh, wow. So right at where Part 2 is at.
Well, yeah, I think so. Because for be honest with you, for years, Part 2 would have been 2 points beyond this movie.
Yeah.
It would have been like a 5 out of 10. And I came up with a 7 out of 10, and I give this one a 7 out of 10. I own it on DVD. I don't even know if that DVD exists anymore. It might be out of print by this point.
I had a heck of a time trying to find it.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I bought this movie like 12, 13 years ago.
Oh my gosh.
You know, I bought a lot of the movies I owned 12, 13 years ago. I probably have so many DVDs that are out of print. I don't even know at this point. But I'm happy to own it. I do love it. And for me, it is the last great sequel of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, because next year, I'm just saying, you got to get Greg Mortis on this podcast, because that SOB made me watch that movie twice.
I'm going to need to get a huge cask of Jim Beam honey. That's all I'm saying.
Yes. Get Jim Beam honey, get Greg Mortis on the podcast and let him know that it was me who made him watch this goddamn movie again.
I will see what strings I am able to pull. I have a year to plan about.
Yes,
so,
you have a full year. Yes.
Yes. Oh my gosh. Well, awesome. I'm pretty much on the same page as you, Dave, whenever it comes to the rating of this film. Aaron, how do you feel about the film, though?
Okay. Well, as much as we've been sucking the dick of this movie, I'm gonna put the dick right back in my mouth. I like this movie. I think the cinematography's great. I love the 3D, more fleshed out characters versus, if we pop in your average Friday the 13th movie or something, I don't give a fuck about these guys. Kill them. These guys, I was like, either I like them or I don't like them, but at least I know a little bit about them before I kill them. I like the setting, just the whole road and the forest and the swamp. The house was maybe a little weaker than in the previous spooky layers, but
yes, I agree 100%.
Yeah,
yes,
but I still kind of dug it. I mean, some of my favorite scenes were inside the house with the family bickering or getting blasted to pieces. So I thought this film was solid. I do where it does kind of go down to me. I think there are some lulls in the pacing where I'm like, okay, where are we? What are we doing? And I do think a lot of the things that shine about this movie just shined greater in the first movie. I mean, even a lot of the stuff that they were going for, that was like, that's kick-ass. It's like, okay, well, this is also a movie about the same family. They own a different gas station. They have a different guy with a prosthetic.
Yes.
It's like a lot of it just kind of rhymes, and I was like, okay, yeah, you already did that, but I still like it. So with all that in mind, this is like an 8 out of 10 for me.
Wow.
Nice.
Man.
Wow.
You are ruffling the waters, because so you rated it higher than part 2.
I like, yeah. As much as I like part 2, again, these are different movies. I feel like the first movie was like straight horror slasher. The second movie was comedy, and this one was like more of a suspense film than anything for me, because it's tracking them through the forest. It's like a survival kind of aspect. Right. So I feel like they just keep trying new subgenres with every sequel, and I kind of dug it. But it was a different vibe, but I dug it for different reasons than the second movie.
Wow. Okay, man.
Cool.
We are really shaking the waters, because I believe you gave the first one a 9.
Yeah.
And then the second one 7 and 8.
Yeah.
So I'm going to be the one, whenever it comes to sucking phallic things, probably going to be taking a step back, because I'm actually coming in a little below where you guys rated it. Okay. Now, here's my kind of stance and where I was kind of holding off. I think one of the things that does struggle a little bit, even though the characters are stronger than most horror films, they're not strong enough to where whenever you have those lulls, those moments, I just felt like not a lot was happening at the current moment, which I feel like for a horror film, especially slashers, it's good to have a breather and everything. I felt like they were stretched out a little bit too long. I was hankering for some chainsaw action. And I guess that's why whenever it came to the horror, whenever they finally got it, I felt like they cut away too soon. And they also couldn't convey the violence as well as Toby did in the first one. And it's like small moments like that. And if I'm comparing the performances to the others that came before them, whether it's, oh my gosh, I can't think of the actress's name who played Sally in the first one, Gunnar Hansen, Jim Seedow, or even in the second one with friggin' Bill Moseley or Caroline Williams. I just kind of miss them compared to this cast of characters, even though I did love seeing Ken Foray doing an excellent job, and Viggo Mortensen, just forget about it. Absolute best character of the film for me. So with all that said in mind, I'm coming in lower at a 6 out of 10. I still enjoyed the film. There's definitely a lot of merits I enjoyed about it. I just felt like I was longing for a bit more than what the other films brought for me personally. So it's crazy to see that we're kind of cuddled close together, but we're all at our separate post, it seems like.
Yeah.
So overall, above average ratings for Leatherface, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre 3. So still definitely a worthwhile recommendation. So obviously this is the part of the show where if you have any sort of interest in watching the film, now's the time to bow out, locate your copy on eBay, or maybe see if it's available for rent, because genuinely it wasn't hard as in like, oh, it's super expensive. It just wasn't readily available. Like I said, I just looked on eBay and I was like, $12 for a copy. Yep, sure, here you go. And it worked perfectly. So hopefully one of these days it will get a remaster, because I have to ask you, Dave, does it bother you that Shout Factory has remastered The Next Generation but not Leatherface?
Yes, it kind of does.
Because that's the copy of the movie I have just waiting for 2024. It's sitting.
Oh, yeah. It bothers me to no end.
Yeah, we need to start talking to Justin, see what he's able to come up with there, whether it's entangled in licenses and everything else. Because that was one of the things that I was surprised with, because like the first one recently it has gotten multiple remasters. The second one actually got a 4K remaster from Vinegar Syndrome recently, which I still need to get my hands on. But the third one, it's just only been the DVD and the VHS, maybe Laserdisc. I don't even know by that point. But yeah, so definitely go watch it if you don't wish to be spoiled, because we're going to jump right into these spoiler swamps here. So Dave, would you please once again do us the honors of talking about the first spoiler we want to discuss on this podcast episode?
Okay, well, I think you got to go to the end of the movie.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah, where with the family, where you have Jennifer Banco, you have all the family, and just what happens with them. For a large portion of this movie, if you're looking at what happens when the film breaks itself down, you don't have those spoilers. But when you get to the end of this movie with Jennifer Banco and everything, you have like an amazing amount of spoilers.
Yeah, one of the things I do want to talk about as spoilers is the fact that it is revealed that Tex is actually in on the whole thing the entire time.
Yeah.
Yes.
I feel like
that scene where he's like blown away by, oh God, who's that character? Alfredo.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And you think he's not going to survive, and all of a sudden he's there in the middle of the fucking road.
Yeah.
It leads you to believe, like, okay, this guy's not who we thought he was.
Yeah, he was doing the good cop routine the whole time, while Alfredo was the bad cop. It's like, oh, listen, you want to go down this road that's not on the maps.
Yeah, almost taking the same role as Jim Seedow did in the first film, kind of seeming like he was the person that was going to save.
Where Jim Seedow's like, I just can't get any joy out of violence. But yet he's sitting there smiling and saying, the whole. Just watch the first movie.
Yes, if you have not watched the first film, A, why are you still here after spoilers? B,
why you're sitting here for Leatherface, check the Chainsaw Massacre 3 if you haven't seen the first movie.
But yeah, it was one of those things that I had an inkling suspicion that Tex might be a member of the Sawyer family, but I was like, this is a pretty elaborate setup, like them getting into a fight, him telling him to go down the road and everything.
Yeah,
but at the same
that
point,
was the thing with me. Yeah, that was the thing with me. It's like, how did Tex convince him? But he did. He convinced him to go down that road, so that when he was going down, they were going down there, and she's like, "Where do we go? How do we get away from this?" Hey, Tex told us, make a right here.
Yeah, I
go
guess
down that road. And I'm telling you, the moment they did that, I'm sitting there watching this movie. The very first time I watched it, I said, "Oh, you're fucked."
Yeah, that's the moment.
The one thing I will give film credit, I just assume it's like making a hasty decision. And Ryan sees Tex as a reliable guy since he's like saving them from Alfredo and the shotgun.
He took a bullet for him.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's about the only thing I could imagine. But it is funny because like Vigo just appearing before them, you know, to have them swerve off as they run into Benny's Jeep, basically.
All of a sudden, yeah, he's there and they collide with Ken Foray's Jeep.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. And
it's so cool.
Yeah, it really is. But the thing that I was like surprised by is the fact that whenever it's like fully revealed that, you know, like, oh, he's a Sawyer family member, and he goes into maniacal mode, which Vigo does perfectly. I wasn't sure how good he would be channeling his inner psychoticness, but he did it like perfectly.
Well, let me tell you something. Viggo Mortensen, as far as I'm concerned, is one of the great American actors.
I can't
I thought
disagree
he
with
was
that.
amazing in this movie. He was amazing as Aragorn.
Yes.
In the Texas Chainsaw, not Texas Chainsaw, Lord of the Rings, in the Lord of the Rings films. He was amazing in those movies as well. But I'm telling you, watch that film directed by Sean Penn.
Yes, I will be sure to put that on my backlog.
Definitely watch that. Based on the Bruce Springsteen song Highway Patrolman. Watch that movie.
Yeah, I promise you, Dave. I hope at least by next generation I will have seen that film. I will make sure to make a priority for you.
Definitely do. Because you will gain a respect for Viggo Mortensen as an actor.
Man, I mean, I felt
in
like
that movie that you don't even get that in the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. You don't even get it in the Lord of the Rings.
Man,
but you get it in that movie.
That's pretty strong because I felt like in both this film and of course the Lord of the Rings trilogy, he gives one hell of a performance.
Oh, he does.
Yeah,
he absolutely does. But I'm telling you, in that film directed by Sean Penn, God damn, what the hell's the name of that movie?
Is it the Indian Runner?
The Indian Runner, yes. Thank you, my friend. That is the name of the movie. Watch The Indian Runner. I'm telling you, you will gain respect for Viggo Mortensen as an actor in that movie based on a Bruce Springsteen song from his album, Nebraska, Highway Patrolman. You will gain respect for Viggo Mortensen in The Indian Runner that you never had before.
I will be sure to.
Even in The Lord of the Rings.
It's funny to hear that a movie is inspired by a song there. So I will be sure to send you a message with my very short review. I'll try not to make it paragraphs long. I'll try to give the general
please do. It doesn't matter. 2 sentences. Give me anything.
All right. I will certainly do that. One thing that, and this is like a me thing that I notice with Viggo is like whenever he switches into maniacal form, you know, because he's made to look like a love interest at the beginning for Michelle, you know, just really handsome Texan guy there, got the cool hat, you know, big belt buckle. But then as he goes into Sawyer mode, he dons the overalls, which I find super funny because he wears the overalls the entire thing. But here's the thing that bothered me the most. I was still attracted to him. He was handsome as all get out, which I am not used to any Sawyer family members looking attractive. No offense to the rest of the cast, but they look like a crazy family. But it was like one of those things that I'm like, yeah, you know, he's like Ted Bundy, dude. He's got the looks. He can just lure me there.
As a family, I mean, they usually got the brains and the bronze, you know, and Leatherface holding down the bronze category. But they don't usually have the beauty, so I like that they added in a beauty.
And I'm with you 100%. Yes, you know he was like the token beauty.
Yes.
Of this film, he really was.
Yeah, it was just so funny because that would just always distract me because I'm like, I know I should be horrified by him, and even though he, you know, obviously there's been performances where people have been attractive but terrifying at the same time. I just felt like more like, man, he's just handsome. Like, his hair's falling perfectly, even though he's going to full Sawyer mode.
It honestly reminded me of, like, House of a Thousand Corpses or Devil's Rejects or something with that family where they have what's her
Baby?
name? Baby. Yeah, like Baby, whose job it is just to be hot and lure people in. Like his job was just that, but the opposite.
And Baby would have lured me in every freaking moment of the day.
He's just the gender swapped Baby. That's what I'm saying. He's like there to like lure in girls that shouldn't be on this road and be like.
I don't know that Viggo would have lured me in as much as Baby would have.
No. I'm in the same camp, but he sure lured in Kate Hodge. That's for sure.
Yes. Absolutely.
But that's like one of those weird things that's been just stuck in my mind is just like, this is the most attractive Sawyer family member.
You're like Squidward in that
no
episode
doubt.
where he's like, oh no, he's hot.
But I mean, he does play up the crazy really good, though. I will say that. It's not like one of those things that I didn't buy that
when it comes down to it, he does.
Yes.
Yes, he does.
And just like the smallest things he does, and like that's a great thing, because you're talking about like being one of the great American actors. He is bringing his A game to the third Texas Chainsaw Massacre film.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it's just crazy to think about, because he does these small things, like the smallest things, like whenever he's in the kitchen, he's like randomly flossing his teeth there. Or whenever Tinker calls him Eddie, he's like, don't call me Eddie, call me Tex. And he like throws that hatchet on the countertop there. It's just like small moments like that I'm just like, God, this is just great. Like, you are the star of the film.
It is. It's great stuff. It really is. It's great stuff.
And even whenever he has that final fight against Ken, he's just absolute Looney Tunes, like off his rocker, you know, going at it, just giggling, and he's like swinging at him with the axe and everything.
Mm-hmm.
And they're blasting that loud rock and roll music.
Yep.
But, you know, I know I said he was hot, but I did not expect him to be super hot by the end of the film.
Super hot fire. Yeah. I knew as soon as he chopped open the gas tank or whatever, I was like, yep, there's gonna be an explosion. He's gonna die in a fiery thing. The lighter's gonna come full circle.
Yeah, you knew from the moment Sarah gave the lighter back after they lit up the cigarette.
Something's
You're like,
gonna be on fire.
Yeah. Aaron's like, something's gonna get on fire.
Well, of course, because there was gasoline all over the place by that point.
Yes.
They were, man, this movie I do think had some pretty obvious but still satisfying like hooks. Like, I feel like in the beginning, wherever Kate Hodge's character has to kill the armadillo with the rock or whatever, and then in the end, of course,
it was the boyfriend who eventually killed the armadillo.
True.
Mm-hmm.
Because Kate Hodges could not do it.
Right. So she
She
had
couldn't
this
bring
task.
herself to do it, and the boyfriend goes up and says, "Sorry, little guy."
Right. Sorry, little guy.
and that resonates later in the film,
Yes.
Mhm.
where she is there in that scene with Leatherface in the pond or whatever the
bashing him
hell
on
it
the head.
is.
Yeah.
And she's
Bald.
like, "Sorry, little guy." Sorry, little guy.
Yeah, just starts wailing, like going 2001 Space Odyssey, just
Yep. Just beating the shit out of him.
Yeah. But I think there are a few moments, and the lighter is another one of those where they're like, this is going to come up later. And it's like, okay.
Yes.
Yeah. Which, speaking of that lighter scene in general, that was one of the things that I did find kind of distracting. Because whenever Leatherface is fighting Ken in the woods and everything, and they have that tense scene where I love that Leatherface has it to where the chainsaw is continually going even if he isn't holding it.
Mm-hmm.
And not only that, he has a little buzzsaw with him.
Yeah, that little tiny little
Yeah,
saw.
right. He thought enough to bring another saw along to the park.
Yes. And he's still just keeping within his weaponry arsenal that you would imagine.
I'm with you, because in that scene where Ken Foray throws the lighter, he was rolling in the gasoline as much as Leatherface was.
Yeah.
I would have never lit that lighter.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
Because I would have gone up in flames as much as any other character in that damn movie.
And it's funny because you don't really know what happens. I mean, you assume that Viggo dies off screen while he's caught on fire.
And then the truck explodes.
You know, the
they have,
truck explosion. I
five
forgot
camera
about
angles
that
of it
already.
because it's a 90s truck explosion.
You know what? If he didn't die, well, bullshit.
Right. Well, there's a lot of characters in this movie that should have died and then just bumped up later.
Right. Oh God, who was it? The Pauly Shore character. Yeah.
Yeah. Him? He's with Ken Foray. Yeah.
He should have been at the bottom of that goddamn bog.
I felt the same way about Benny. He just got like chainsawed up and then he's like, "Hey, I'm back." We're like, "Oh, okay."
Yeah, that was. There's some crazy stuff happening in the final act for sure. One thing I did want to get before getting to the final act there is one thing that did kind of distract me is like whenever Sarah initially pops up, I feel like her only moment in that film was to pull Leatherface away from Ken being killed, basically. I felt like that was the only thing there, and providing extra background of like, oh yeah, they killed my family. And then whenever he tells her to stay there, she ends up getting chased down by Leatherface and killed against a tree, which I felt like they wanted to show more than what they could, because all they showed is like blood splattering on her face.
Right.
So that was unfortunate, but...
It definitely was, yes.
Yeah, so that was unfortunate, but they fully make up for the action violence at the end, because like I said, as soon as Ken pulls up to the house with that gun and just opens fire on everybody inside.
Oh, I seriously love that scene. I do. The shooting through the window. I think the part I laughed at the most was when Grandpa was hit.
Yeah. You're
like, okay. So if he wasn't dead, now he's dead.
I love
that scene.
Grandpa's face turned to dust.
Yes. All of a sudden, Grandpa, who we knew was dead for all along, dies.
Right.
Yeah, and they just confirm it. Like, his face is caved in.
Yes. That scene where Ken Foray blows his ass out of the water. Yeah, that was amazing.
Yeah, it's a lot of crazy moments like that. But it's funny because... obviously, the film doesn't want to hurt the little girl, even though she is a menace to society there. But
you know what? Let's be honest, little bitch.
Yeah.
She was a total little bitch in this movie. She was, from start to finish. But because it was the 1990s, they're not going to let her suffer for it.
No.
Yeah, they couldn't have like a Tropic Thunder moment, like, you know, where Ben Stiller grabs.
Oh my God, Tropic Thunder when he throws that kid.
They should have had a moment like that. If they didn't kill her.
I wish they had a moment like that in this movie. I really did. Where they took Jennifer Banco and just sort of threw her.
Can't you see Ken Foray just like drop kicking her?
Yeah.
He's a survivalist. He's gotta do what you gotta do.
Oh my gosh. Because half the Sawyers are taken out, I imagine, because obviously Mama Sawyer's down. Grandpa...
there's more than half.
Yeah.
If you think about it, there's more than half. I think Leatherface and little Jennifer Banco, just because she was sitting in the back going slash slash.
Yeah.
Technically, they're the only survivors of this movie.
Yeah. Technically, they're the only ones there because, I mean, even though Viggo survived, he quickly caught on fire. And then Tinker, I thought he was still alive, but I guess he died from the bullet wounds, which I love that shot of his fingers falling back, the practical effect where they had to show his fingers shot off. Oh my gosh.
It's a great scene. It really is.
Which maybe that's why they had to pull back on a lot of the early violence, is because they were just using all their tokens at the end of the film, cashing out.
Well, you know what? I can't blame them. I can't blame them. Because with the restrictions that the MPAA put on, the studios, fuck it. Do everything you can right out of the gate.
Right. Yeah. Oh my gosh. Because they have some they have some hysterical scenes leading up, but it is also surrounded by some horrific scenes, because one of the ones I was definitely surprised by was seeing that, whenever Ryan gets his foot caught in the bear trap earlier in the film, I was thinking, oh, that's it, he's gone. But no, they drag him back, and seeing him hoisted upside down above that sink and everything, I was already getting the willies. Like, that channeled close to what the first film had for me, that sense of uncomfortableness.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
I am with you 100%. That scene where he is hanging above that sink. And that's the scene where Jennifer Banco comes out and says, no, don't do this. And they go to the girlfriend. She's like sort of looking at saying, hey, that's really cool. And Jennifer Banco's like, no, you said I could kill him next.
Yes. And that contraption, that Looney Tunes freaking contraption they have there, I did not know what was going to happen. I knew nothing good, but I'm like, is she like going to stab him or something? No, they have like the hammer hoisted up, and they have that little pull string there. And that is one of the times where they cut away that I actually felt like reminded me of the first film as well. Like, I felt the impact of the hit of the hammer crushing against Ryan's skull at that moment. And that gave me the willies for sure. So I give this film major clout for being able to accomplish kind of what the first film did in some of the scenes. I just wish they could have done that with every sort of like horror scene.
No, I'm with you. I'm with you 100%. But you know what? The fact that the studios muted it, I think it's bullshit.
Yeah, for sure. I
do. I think it's absolute bullshit that they went to what was the MPAA's guidelines at the point, and they said, okay, we're going to limit this, we're going to limit that. Fuck you and the horse you rode in on.
Yeah. Definitely very unfortunate. MPA interference was probably more prominent than any of the films thus far, for sure. And I will say one thing that did make me super uncomfortable was the fact of whenever they're just cutting away his clothes with like the big knife, kind of like it's the skin of an animal. And it's like funny, but also still disturbing whenever they're talking about like, look, Ma, he has colored undies. Just doing that. Californians. Doing that. But another horrific scene to jump over to is, of course, what happens to Michelle as a character, which channels back to The Devil's Rejects. I feel like Rob Zombie was probably paying homage of whenever she's tied to the chair and her hands have been nailed to the arms of the chair.
Oh, yeah.
Jeez.
Yeah, that was just brutal. And like I said, it just sent me back to whenever the Firefly family is all being interrogated inside their house, nailed to the chair. So that was brutal to watch there, and especially seeing her pull the hands out whenever.
Oh, yeah. Dude, and I love that they had all that stuff happen after the girl that runs up in the forest and gives Ginforay the lighter,
Yes.
He sees her hands are all bloody and was like, oh, I didn't realize you were that injured. So you realize she escaped from the same kind of situation, like retrospectively. You're like, oh, there's the hand injuries. At least that's what I
wow.
I didn't even pick up that. I saw the injury on the hands, but I didn't put two and two together, so I'm glad you mentioned that.
Yeah.
But yeah, definitely they are able to do a lot of brutal violence there. I will say whenever it comes to the final showdown, whenever they do have Leatherface, bouncing around in the swamp water there, I feel like it's not... It's hard to compete with the final, like the previous two films in their finale, like, because I think of the big finale as obviously Dennis Hopper versus Leatherface on the dining room table there,
yeah.
and Bill Moseley chasing Caroline Williams up the mountain in the second film, or the first one, Gunnar Hansen and the hitchhiker chasing after Sally out there. But it still is fun, only because as soon as they land in the water, that chainsaw is just bubbling around.
Yeah.
It is so buoyant to just be floating there, to be like a hazard to Ken Foray's character.
Yeah, I thought that part was just, I love anytime a kill happens with, like, I don't know what you call it, like a stage prop, like a prop, like something that's happening that's part of the environment, I guess, an environmental kill. And he kind of made it still give you a chainsaw kill while it being part of the environment of, like, this dangerous bobbing chainsaw in the water while they're wrestling around. God, I just loved that. It was just equally funny to me that, like, 5 minutes later, you see him rip up in a truck, and he just has some scratches on his face, and he's like, no explanation. It was just a flesh wound, you know?
Yeah, he came out of that fight fairly unscathed. Oh, man. What were your thoughts about the final fight with Leatherface and the bobbing chainsaw, Dave?
No.
Oh, okay. I know that's what I love about you, Dave. You either have everything to say about something, or you're like, nope.
Or have not a goddamn thing to say. Yes.
That's why I was just making sure I didn't want to be talking over you. But
No.
no. I will say I was surprised how easily disposed of Alfredo was whenever he has that encounter with Ken Foray. And, like, does Ken Foray end up...
Yeah, but his ass lasted a lot longer than it should have.
Yes, for sure.
If we're being honest, he should have been in that bog,
Yes.
like, 10 scenes sooner than he was.
Yes, for sure. But we couldn't hear his lovely song that he hummed in the woods and seeing him chunk body parts in the water, which I'm surprised they're chunky body parts in the water, because no joke, I was expecting a Sawyer family alligator or something.
Oh.
I was disappointed there was no gator in Leatherface, the
No.
Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Well, you know what? Watch Eaten Alive from 1976.
Yes,
Yeah.
I need my gator fix.
And then you
Toby
will
Hooper
be
gator.
there.
All right, good to know. I will just make it canonically tied to the Texas Chainsaw Massacre events. Oh my gosh. But it does lead to the end of the film where, you see Michelle walking out on that road, and then you see the Last Chance truck pull up, and then it turns out it's Ken Foray, who again, no joke, he has scars on the side of his head.
Yeah.
It's just like, yeah, that's what I thought. I'm like, that is super lucky it was only grazed.
Yeah.
And no brain damage was going on. Like, I expected, like, his head to be flopped open like an open can or something, like flopping, with how cut up he was.
Yeah. Maybe his brain was a little damaged, so he didn't notice Alfredo was also there somehow. Like, in the trunk or something? I don't know, but...
Yeah, oh my gosh. Yeah, that was a surprise that Alfredo was hiding in the trunk the entire time, and then pops out. But I will say that the final moments of, like, just Kate screaming at the top of her lungs, while I don't think she unfortunately captures the title Scream Queen like the previous actresses have in the Texas Chainsaw Massacre films, she still does a good scream. Like, whenever she's like, yeah, you know what? Fuck it, let's go. Doing that. And then whenever it comes to Alfredo, it's like, no, I've had enough. I'm done with you.
Right.
And grabs a shotgun. And I'm just surprised she didn't instantly blast him, because I would have blasted that sucker to the sky.
I think they had to give the audience a little bit of, like, anticipation of, like, okay, she couldn't kill the roadkill in the start of the movie. Can she kill him there? Which, I mean... We had already seen her crazy with the knife before, so I was like, she's gonna blast him. Like, I don't think whatever suspense they were trying to give us worked, but I was like, yeah, go ahead and put a hole in that guy.
Yeah, and then you end up with, like, that classic, like, line that they bring back up. It's like, there's a lot of roadkill in Texas.
Yeah.
And it's like, yep. And then they drive away into the sunset, and then you see Leatherface's leg and his chainsaw right there as it cuts to credits there. It's just it's like very Hollywood ending.
Yeah, they made sure to tease the next superhero in this Marvel movie or whatever. They're like, Leatherface still here, you know.
Yeah. Leatherface will return in the next generation. Oh my god. Oh man. Man, yeah, that's a lot of the big stuff, just kind of talking about the ending and all the craziness that happens there. Dave, any other points you want to talk about with this film or anything else like that, bud?
No. I think we hit everything.
All right, awesome. I am curious, do you remember how many times as of today you have seen Leatherface, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre 3?
4.
I love it.
Yes, I've seen this film 4 times.
All right, excellent. Probably nowhere near as much as the first one.
No, I've seen the first one. I watch the first one every year.
Oh, so
I
that
do.
also
I love the first one.
So that also joins the other 3 films. What was it? Alien, Poltergeist, Jaws?
Alien, Poltergeist, Jaws, and Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Yes.
Nice.
Yes.
All right. Well, man, I had one hell of a time talking about this film, and so I'm going to do something I forgot to do at the start of this episode, and that was to salute you, Dave, and another year of Poppin the Scary horror podcast.
Nice.
So I've got our 2 shot glasses we got whenever we went on our Texas trip for the very first episode to visit the Sawyer family household and the gas station. 2 shot glasses right here respectively. One filled with Bacardi coconut rum, the other one filled with Admiral Nelson's coconut rum. And Aaron and I are prepared. Dave, we salute you in your dedication to horror, and thanks for keeping horror alive, as Greg says. And we look forward to doing this another year. Cheers, bud.
Nice.
Oh, I gotta be honest, Dave. I'm glad you got good taste in alcohol, bud, because I love coconut rum. And
Nice.
And if you told me it was like something like Jack Daniels, which tastes honestly to me like cleaner and everything,
Yes.
I would still
I'm
do
with you.
it. I would still do it, but I would definitely be like, okay, it's for Dave. Dave, that. Whew.
Well,
Man.
thank you. Yes,
No.
for me, Bacardi rum is like it's the pinnacle.
Yes, it has that nice burn that rum is known for, but it gives
Yes.
enough sweetness to like balance it out, so you get the
Yes.
best of both worlds. So,
Agreed.
yeah, that went down smooth, and it's like I said, I can't thank you enough, Dave, for being on this episode. You have truly been a blessing in my life, and I've had an amazing time talking with you about this film.
It has been my pleasure. It really has. It has been my pleasure.
Yes, and like I said, next year I'm going to start laying the groundwork. I'm going to make the plan work. You know, Macaulay Culkin style trap to trap Gregor Mortis.
365 days.
I'm telling you, you have to have Greg on the episode if I'm going to watch that fucking movie again.
Otherwise, I might drag Justin and be like, so why did Scream Factory remaster this movie, Justin?
Yes, exactly.
And I'm sure
Why did you waste your goddamn time?
And I can just imagine Justin being like, you know, to be honest, I'm not really sure. I'm really sorry. He is such a super nice, polite dude.
He's a sweetheart.
Yeah.
He really is. Justin Beam is an amazing guy.
Yeah. He is.
I've known him for years, and I've never had a bad instance with him.
Yeah, he genuinely seems like a really sweet dude. He also follows the podcast, so thank you, Justin, for giving us a follow. I hope to one day have him on the show as well as a guest, because I would just love to talk his ears off, especially because of his dedication to physical media, just like I have.
Yep, me too.
Even if it's preserving films that Dave despises with all of his heart.
Yes, but you know what? Those movies deserve to be, they're amazing.
They deserve to be.
As a whole, they're good. If you take the entirety.
Right.
Yes. Even if it's this Texas Chainsaw Massacre Part 4, The Next Generation, fuck it. Preserve those movies.
Well, bless you for being a trooper, Dave. All right. right, so now we have come to the moment of teaser time where Aaron and I have no idea what film is coming up next because Dave Dr. Shock Becker is going to be setting our trajectory for the next new episode of Poppin the Scary Horror Podcast. So Dave, please take it away for us, bud.
Okay. I have to ask you, have you seen The Autopsy of Jane Doe?
I have not, but I have heard a lot of good things about it.
Okay. That is the movie I choose for your next episode.
Holy hell, not even teasing. You just gave it straight to us. Holy
tease
hell,
was-
dude.
Have you heard of it?
Yeah.
Man,
I
was...
had 5 movies in reserve.
Yeah.
You were...
5 freaking movies in reserve. If you had seen that movie. But that is the top film. Watch The Autopsy of Jane Doe.
Oh my God,
Dude.
I love you, Dave. Well, hold on to the recommendations if you appear for the 3rd anniversary for Poppin the Scary Horror Podcast.
Yes.
We'll see if that
And let
gets
me
in.
tell you something. If you do not like The Autopsy of Jane Doe, but you like Texas Chainsaw Massacre: The Next Generation, fuck you.
We won't fail you, Dave.
I'll try not to. The problem is I am brutally honest, which that is why.
Absolutely. Be that way. Be brutally honest.
But now I'm scared
Yeah,
because
be
if I'm
really
like,
honest, but have good taste.
Dave,
though.
I gotta be honest. I think they were onto something that Toby was missing out on.
I really
I don't
think this
think
is
I'll
the
say
next
that.
generation.
I don't think I'll say that. But, oh my God. But yes, I will definitely. Man, holy hell, yeah.
Let me tell you something. The Autopsy of Jane Doe. There are 2 different movies in that. The first film is a mystery.
Mm.
The second part of that movie is a horror film.
Oh, okay.
Straight up horror film. But I think both functions of that film work amazingly.
Oh, man. Well, this is.
You
really...
have the mystery, you have the horror. Both of them work in unison to make that an amazing film.
Man, well, I am super excited because that's one of the films that I feel like I've heard in passing. Like, you know, it's like, oh yeah, I watched The Autopsy of Jane Doe, but that's it.
Right.
That is all I've heard about it, so it makes me very
Nice.
excited and curious to dive in. So, whew, man, I can't thank you enough. I'm glad you came in like Rambo with your recommendation bandolier strapped on, ready to dish it out. And thank you, Dave, for attending this episode. We can't
Thank
you
you
enough.
because it was a true honor. It
Yes.
really was.
Well, it was twice the honor for me. Trust me.
Yeah, we really appreciate it.
I'm just glad that I at least have more nerves about me than I did the first time.
No, you know what? It's funny. You were great the first time. You were even better this time.
Oh, holy hell, dude!
Even better with
thank
age.
you.
Yeah.
Well, I appreciate that, buddy. I definitely appreciate that. I'm definitely thankful to have Aaron as my co-host. He is
Yes.
my anchor to keep me going on. And yeah, I'm happy he's my venturing buddy whenever it comes to the world of horror.
Gosh, thanks. I feel the same way, bud.
All right. Well, thank you, Dave, and thank you all so much for listening to this episode. And we'll see you all again next time when we're popping the scary with The Autopsy of Jane Doe.
Nice.
Yes. Man, I said that like a badass. Look at me
Oh,
go.
shit. First try? We don't need another take.
Wow.
Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube, Castbox, or iTunes platforms to stay up to date when new episodes drop. To see what Aaron and I are up to, check out our respective Twitter accounts. For me, it is @ColeKirkVA, and for Aaron, it is @AnimalGameDev. Thank you all so much for listening to our podcast. We'll speak to you all again next time when we're poppin' the scary.
And speaking of sucking, that'll be next year's episode.
Oh my gosh! Yeah, we're gonna need you might need an entire bottle of Admiral Nelson by your side, or
Oh,
Parrot
I'm
or
going to need a
Bacardi.
bottle and a half.
Yeah.
I'm going to need an intravenous. I'm going to need a needle in my arm with Admiral Nelson feeding down into it to get through that one. And you better get Greg Mortis on that episode because screw him, he made me watch that movie twice.